All right. Good evening. I'd like to call the Regional School District 13 Board of Education special meeting, March 13th, 2024 at 5:06. I'll call in for the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
All right, again, good evening. Here for our work session. Number 2, approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda? So moved.
Second.
Second by Jason. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes. All right. Number 3, joint work session with the building committee. Rusty and Carson, welcome back. I feel like we're all family at this point. And thank you to the building committee for coming tonight. And the board, we're gonna start with A and get an update from Rusty and Carson. If you have the link here, we have the updated PDF. Anyone doesn't have their thingies, I have one copy here. Grab that. All right, you guys want to take it away? Go ahead.
There's formatting.
Oh, yeah, of course. We are a little farther apart today, so we're probably gonna have to project a little bit, except for Rusty's got the handy microphone.
Good evening. So the main piece that we want to report, I think, did meet with the state. And Michelle Dixon was on the call along with representatives from the school administration. And it was a good meeting overall. Actually, one of the things that Michelle mentioned to us that instead of the 752 number, that we should use the 764 number for the highest enrollment projection. I was concerned about the 752 because it puts us right at the cusp of 750, where the square foot per student drops. But by going to the 764 number, it really doesn't make a difference to the overall square footage. So it turned out to be, positive in that sense. But she felt that from the day of the acceptance of the application, which will be 2025, that's when the 8-year window would start. So that's what we need to look at. It doesn't really change anything in terms of the space requirements, but it gives us a little more square footage to work with and programmatically. So that's what we're looking at right here. So it's hard to read, but that's that number there, 764, whereas before we're going with a number right above it. As the enrollment continues to increase as the time goes out. So we did run the state calculations on this, and really what we end up with is if we go with the renovator's new option, there is a portion of the building that's pre-1959, and we get a bonus for that. In other words, we don't only 80% of that square footage is allocated as space standard for space standard. So what that does is, we're allowed 93,625 net square footage. You see a lot of net and gross, and the way the documents, the state documents are set up is that we start with net. Then the gross really doesn't come into play, but it's important because when they do calculations for costs, we do it based on gross square footage. So we were allowed 93,625. Which is important because if you build a new school and you want to stay within the space standards and not impact your reimbursement, then the 93,625 is the limit. If you go with the renovation option, then you actually have a little bit more square footage. Based on the designs that we put together, the adjusted square footage is 88,965. which is a net square footage, which when you gross it up and adjust it, we have about 3,700 square feet, and that we can still increase the building size by and not impact the reimbursement rate, which is important because if, as we go through this process, there are other requirements that say, no, we really need another room here or another space there, you have that capacity to add that space without impacting space standards. And not so your rate would stay at 52.14. Additionally, of course, as you know, if we are building a new building, then that rate is impacted by 10%. So it would be 42.14. If it's a new building, 52.14 under the renovation status project. So that is important to understand and to make sure that Michelle and the state are on the same page as us, and that's how we concluded that portion of the meeting. Now, we did present some of the earlier slides where we looked at the 3 school, the 4 school, and the 5 school options, just to give them some background on the project itself and how we arrived. And so we gave them a presentation that talked about all the different options that we looked at, really starting from the 3, 4, and 5 school options, and concluded that the Board of Education selected the 3 school option. And since then, what we have done is we looked at what does that look like, the 3 school option. In other words, there's a renovation option, there's a new school option with the site occupied, and there's a new school option with the site unoccupied. So those are the other options that we have in the fact that we have a 3 school option. So this first one we're looking at right now, which we're calling C1, is the renovated new option. And you can see, this layout is something we presented to the committee before. And what we've done now is we've gone into more detail. Before it was sort of a bubble diagram. Now we've actually taken and brought it into our CAD system, our modeling system, to have that space so we can query all the square footages and know very definitively what the building areas are, what the net and gross areas are, how much area is being assigned for the various programs. Now, as you know, in the renovated new option, we've got classrooms that are existing and we're working with those rooms. So we're not expanding those rooms to say, oh, that 800 square foot classroom or 750 is going to be expanded to a 900 square foot classroom. But what we have done is put the pre-kindergarten, the kindergarten, and the first grade in the addition, so we can design those spaces to accommodate the larger square footage required by those programs. And so that's all identified, within this concept. And then the second and third grades are the ones that are in the existing classroom spaces that you see right here in those classrooms are the second and third, and some of them, and some are in the new portion as well. Then the second story of that building, which is the addition, houses the 4th and 5th graders. So that's how this concept has been developed, and this is just one. It could be that there are many other options. In fact, we've looked at many other options in the design process. We felt that this was fairly efficient. Parent drop-off, everybody comes in right down here. So there's a sort of a boulevard entrance. This side, just the buses come in and then they go around and drop off the students and come out. The teacher, this is designated teacher parking right up here. So the teachers usually come in before the buses, and so they're already there when the buses come through and exit. The parents come in here, drop off and exit out. So the 2 traffic patterns don't intersect, which is important to try and achieve in a design of the school. It also gives you a lot of space in the front. So the parents drop off right here. There's the main entrance. The buses are queuing up and dropping off right there. And that's again leading to that same main entrance up the school. One thing we did change in this is that we have the pre-K drop off back here. So this new wing that's being created, the far end is the pre-K and kindergarten classrooms. And having them there, it's, we didn't think it was appropriate for the kindergartners and pre-K students to be dropped up here and them to walk all the way through the building. So this access right here allows for a pre-K kindergarten, mostly pre-K drop off. And that also is a service and emergency access drive that goes around the building. So it's really, for service and emergency access, it's really not used much, but then in the pickup and drop off times, it's used by parents for the pre-K and pick up and drop off. So it's a dedicated area. That's also an area where it can be fenced in. It can be, the playground can be right there. So there's a lot of details and thought that have gone into that particular layout. And in this layout, now the gymnasium becomes the cafeteria, which you can see right here. The kitchen is expanded because now we're serving a much larger population, so we need enough space for the kitchen servery. The service is over here, sort of on the, I guess that's the north side or the west side of the court. We made an attempt to keep the courts that were were built there. We did look at options where we could take those out and just relocate them. But ideally, it worked out quite well. It wasn't really an issue to leave them there in this particular scenario. We do have parking spaces that are approximately 60, about 180 plus parking spaces that are available on the site. As you can see, this parking here was deliberate in the sense that not only does it provide for a loop for the buses, but it also provides parking proximate to the athletic fields, which is important. So because there's a lot of use there after hours. In this scenario, the gym is again located so that there's close access to the fields. And the goal is that there's really the students, as they're going back and forth, there's no traffic of any kind that they're going to walk through, except for this emergency route around it. But that's only in the very infrequently, or if ever, it's used by for fire or police access to the building. So big picture, we're using the existing media center as the media center, but we're opening it up. We're adding, some of the spaces have been renovated for art and music. So all those programs, overall, this concept tries to include all the spaces that have been defined in the previous program in developing this, so that we're as close as we can get to the program for this particular building. Let's go to the next option.
You want feedback at the end or at each?
You tell me.
We probably should have each option, so we're not getting in the weeds and.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess the first question we had is obviously one is stormwater. And how that gets managed on that side. I think this layout is really good. I think it works surprisingly well with what we have, and it almost looking up in terms of how everything's laid out. You've got the new gym near the field. You have parking near the fields. There's an access road around that separates a lot of the movements. Obviously, how it works with Hubbard, I think we'll just need to explore. But I think it does do a really good job. Aside from getting into the details of how does traffic crisscross. But yeah, I think it actually meets a lot of the requirements. It keeps the option open for overflow parking if necessary between the church and a potential sidewalk in there. So yeah, I think the big one is really thoughts on how stormwater will get managed and the existing, the existing utilities.
So we haven't really, I mean, obviously, at this point, the thinking of, we haven't got into the detail of stormwater management. We know we have to do it. It might have to be underground storage of, some kind, or, depending on, because we are adding impervious surfaces here, or impervious surfaces. And we're expanding on the parking, so that's something that will need to be considered. We obviously do not want water to go onto the adjacent properties. I know that this piece of property here was at one point considered in the plan to say that you could purchase it. In fact, we're going to talk about that when we have options. So that could be an area that we could use for stormwater management. But that is something that we'll need to address overall. We don't think it's an insurmountable problem. We think it can be addressed. We've had other sites that are pretty tight.
I think having there's a lot of reuse here. Obviously, your parking lot is exactly where it is. All of your utilities are essentially untouched.
Right.
Most of your foundation work is a lot of so nothing's wasted. Everything is an add-on. But yeah, I think it's a fairly elegant way to address it.
Now, when they come in on C1, that parent loop, technically, would that only be the parent loop right there, or could it go in and around? Because I'm wondering how much overflow on Hubbard you're gonna have coming into that small loop in the front.
So the way it's designed is when you come off Hubbard, you can, this whole, the walk extends all the way down further down here. So you can make that, add as many spaces we can actually do a calculation of how many cars can queue up there. But it's also, some parents can park in the parking spaces. So we've tried to manage as many as we can in that area. We went back and forth as should the buses be dropping off there and the parents in the back. And we felt that, with the number of buses, I think some reason I want the number 17.6 in my mind. I don't know if that's.
You're also working for District 17. Oh, no, you're not. I'm sorry. Deep Rivers.
I do like that it isolates the pre-K and K significantly. Obviously, you want to make sure that there's enough queuing there because they're all going to wait.
Right.
But there's a massive amount of space there for pickup that doesn't impact anything else. So, that just needs to be wide enough to accommodate whatever it is they're going to be.
Would the pre-K and K use the fire emergency service access road to get to it?
That access, so that road, this right here, that's where they would come in and then go up here.
Okay.
There's a turnaround right there and then they would come back out.
I think it's important, I think you guys know this, that we go with this option or any of these options, this is not the actual design. It's just the design concept to get the numbers right into the state application. There'll be a full design process where, if this is what we like, we can stick with it, but
It's
as
good
much
to
as
know
work is done.
to know what's out there though.
Yes, no, and because if you don't have a concept, it's hard to feel good about it. And what can be done, but I think,
So I like the layout also, and I like the fact that we're using the athletic fields, that you're using the parking lot in front. The configuration of the building with renovating the existing building and additions all makes sense to me. The only, and I like the parking next to the athletic fields to provide better parking access to those fields. However, I don't like it for a number of reasons. Number one, it puts it right in the backyards of the existing houses on Hubbard Street. That's the lowest area on the site. To get that parking up to a reasonable grade to have access into the building is going to require a lot of fill. And then to do that, you're going to destroy the existing leaching field by placing that filling. So you're going to have to redesign a whole new leaching field somewhere. If it's under the parking lot, that's going to make it difficult for stormwater management in that area, because that's a low area now. That's where the water drains to. There's really no place to outlet it. In my opinion, I think the church property should be purchased and that parking lot be placed over there. The downside of that is it's not close to the athletic field, but it's still convenient for the school. So for those reasons, I think that parking lot in that location is an issue.
And that's, you know, we anticipate that the septic system, the whole field will be redone because we're going to a much larger population. So the capacity of that field is not going to meet the current requirements. We're going to have to rebuild a new system out there. The question is, could we build that system under these fields? You know, we put systems on the parking lots all the time, so it's a matter of how do we manage the stormwater and the septic and keep them, you know,
Yeah,
keep them
I
separated.
think we'd be inclined to push a new septic system down further on the property, get away from those houses. And that area, like you said, is notoriously wet. So that's another reason we want out of there.
I suspect the reason leaching field is there, because it's probably the best soils on the site. I looked at the soil survey, it shows it as sand and gravel, doesn't
Yeah.
mean there couldn't be good areas on other parts of the site.
Understood. Understood. And the other thing about this concept too is, while it may not be the concept, we do want to kind of eliminate expensive items. So it is worth going through here and kind of tweaking a little bit, because the reality of it is we get stuck with the number and then we hire a great architect other than these guys here who want to design something that we can't afford. So it is important to base your estimate on something. And this is where we're going to tweak it.
Gonna need, elevator for the second story.
Yes. There's an elevator located right at that intersection right there. That's where the two-story wing is right there. So where the new building is intersecting right there's an elevator.
Okay.
Where is that?
Right in T.
At the intersection of
Oh,
the,
see,
of
okay. Thank you.
the two hallways.
Welcome.
You did that.
Question about the fields, semi-related. So if if the school's empty for renovation, non-school use of those fields, like for RSD soccer and stuff, is that not possible during the construction time? Probably, right? Especially if they're putting a beach field there, but.
Right, if there's a period of time that school would not be available because
So
you know, you have
there's a year there
construction.
where they gotta utilize other fields.
That's correct. I mean, could some fields be sort of carved out? Yes, but it'd be, you know, tends to be a problem.
We have later
because of
hours on
safety
our
issues.
fields here because of the lights. We have later hours here because of the lights
Yeah, we
here.
could anticipate some of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just actually shutting it down for one period, just leaving it shut down. Might be easier for everybody wants to get used to it, then hops around to it. You can use it for a couple months on that. But just thinking about other groups in town that are,
I would envision the entire site will be off limits.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking. too. So
Just a
that's-
liability and
Yeah,
all sorts of reasons. And I think it's common. I think we've even seen it with basketball, with some of the teams where they're building new schools and we're
just
sending
thinking
teams
it's-
to elementary schools in order to.
it's carving truck soccer, really. So.
Yeah.
Well, there's quite a few fields. You have Habershon, you have
Yeah,
Strong, you have
there's-
here, you
there's
have Mason.
that they're not used to. So.
I do recall in my girls' early days, they used to use that as a soccer field, that faculty parking area that dips down low as well. I mean, we don't have any legally binding contract that they need to have these fields, right? I don't know what agreement we have with them. Because I know that the top stuff, they built that, right? That was their gig. I believe.
Attributed somehow with sprinklers or something.
There is going to be some cuts over here, you know, in terms of the grade. And I don't know if it'll need to be a state engineered system at this point, so they may, you know, we may be raising up that area a little bit. But those are all details that we're trying to anticipate for the worst. And ideally, yes, you want to keep things where they are, expand them where they are. So if the best solution is to keep the septic system where it is and expand it, and then find another alternative location, for instance, and do your stormwater under this parking lot. You know, that's also an option, but these are the next level of details that we get into.
Where you call out future expansion, that is for what type of issues? Just increase enrollment?
And increase enrollment, right? You know, I think at one point there was a discussion about pre-K, adding some more pre-K classrooms. Or, you know, generally, in this concept, there's space to add classrooms. It's very difficult to add core facilities because once you've sized your gym or you've sized your media center, usually they're so integrated into the layout that it's hard to just to expand them. Not that it can't be done, but in our case, yeah, we could actually expand the gym, because it's open the space around there. And the same is, technically true for the existing building of the media center too. But the key here was to make sure that they were going to expand the pre-KK area.
Rusty, in your experience with, if there is any future growth with food services, you generally just add another lunch wave, right? It's not like you do 1 or 2 only. Some schools do 3 and 4 if
yes.
necessary. So that's not a huge consideration. Oh, no, we need to make it bigger in the future.
It's when you start getting into the 5 lunch waves, et cetera, where the kids are eating lunch at breakfast time, and that's when you start. And let's face it, the enrollment here will be pretty, it's going to be a larger school. So, but that's including K and pre-K and everything else. So when you look at the overall population.
I'm going ahead a little bit, but you're talking about elevators, you're talking about redoing the septic system. Are those costs included in the final costs that you have at the end? They are, okay.
So, when we look at our costs, there's hefty contingencies in there. There are what we call design and escalation contingencies. That's what they're all for. And generally, the overall costs are based on some of the latest estimates that we've received on similar school projects. Some are larger, some are smaller. The school in Madison and Cromwell and Greenwich. We have all that data and we're comparing it and coming up with the costs for the building system. For instance, some of them are way out of whack because they're doing all kinds of enhanced net zero buildings. We're not at this point, we're not going with the quote net zero building unless you turn around and tell me, yes, that's something we really want to do. And then we can add a cost to that. There's some data there that says what's the additional cost. Building a sustainable building doesn't mean it's going to blow your budget out of, because there's ways of addressing sustainability and energy conservation that doesn't really affect you don't have to go over and above. There's a lot of what we call low-hanging fruit and things that we need to do. Really, the state now requires a high-performance building regardless of what you do. That's one of their base requirements. So it used to be that high performance was, a big deal, that we were doing all these energy conservation, methods in there. But now it's standard. And in fact, even on your energy rebates that you'll get from the Eversource, for instance, that's their baseline. So they start there and then they start saying, if you do better than that, you get a certain amount of so many dollars per square foot. And so they've got various programs. And that's something that you definitely imagine, anticipate would be part of this program, because it's, we're required to do an energy model, so that is required anyway. So everything that they would require of us, we have to do anyway in this project. So ultimately, it makes sense to then just go through the process of filling out their application, making sure that the energy conservation, the equipment, the efficiencies are met. And you get the rebate from Eversource as a result of that. And that rebate doesn't, and it goes to the region and it doesn't go specifically to the project. So although you could apply it to the project, I think that's something that if you apply it to the project, then then it takes that value out of the reimbursable number. So in other words, if you were getting 500,000 back, and your project was $70 million, your project would be based on 69.5. So sometimes the math is people that say it's a $70 million project, and they use the rebate in other ways. So that's something to determine at a later time.
Especially the second floor doesn't match the first floor footprint. Is that just so you wanted to keep the pre-K and K a separate wing?
Yeah.
And would it be cheaper to have them match
So one of the things that's driving that is that, we like to keep, the pre-K through two on the first grade, on pre-K through two on the first level. And that's what this is doing, is it's allowing those grades to be on the first floor. And, so 3, 4, and 5 are so the other floors. Now, we can adjust that, but usually what ends up happening is we want to make sure that we're utilizing all the space. The pre-K, K1 is on the first level. And then the other space is on the second floor.
And you can expand if you made a bigger second floor.
We could, and you can extend it over there. But what would happen is, that's something we can look at, and it makes the footprint a little bit more compact. And what would happen is we could build the third grade, put the third grade on the second floor. So 3, 4, and 5 could be on the second floor. In this scenario, we only have 4 and 5 on the second floor. But we would add 6 rooms on the second floor. It's a balance of making sure that the grades are all together. And that's part of what this analysis considered.
So if you're meeting the high performance building standards, doesn't that generally meet like a LEED silver type standard?
Yes, it's an equivalent LEED silver equivalent.
So if we're doing that, we're meeting a relatively high level of sustainability, energy efficiency, et cetera.
Oh, yes. Yeah, the building will not be lacking in that regard.
We normally see something I've seen and I haven't asked, the locker rooms attached to the gym, is that common just now with the K through 5?
We only have locker rooms, that's because you currently have, locker rooms there, and that's also your shelter, so to speak. This is not a shelter, it's not being designed as a shelter, but can be used as that. So if the need for those locker rooms, if there's no need for locker rooms, because you generally don't, want to have, but we kept that because of the existing building and locker room. But that space could be reassigned for other use.
Middlefield would probably like the shelter.
Right.
Yeah, right, it's supposed to be a shelter now,
It's emergency center.
emergency center, yeah.
Great, I think we beat this one up.
No.
Okay. So the next option is a new building on the site of the, on the site there. But in this scenario, it's a new building and the site is unoccupied. So the best location when you've got a new building and an unoccupied site is for the most part right on the existing building for the most part. And what you see here is we're able to, it's similar layout, but in this particular case, in the design of the building, you still have the parking right there adjacent to the fields. You left the sort of the septic area alone right there. And then we were able to have more parking, so there's more queuing space here for the cars for parent drop off. And then so the approach is similar, and this is the bus drop off. So you can enter the school right there or right there. In all cases, you see that's the administration space. This color code right there, that's administration. So you have somebody, people can enter the building from both on the side of the gym, which is right there in the administration, or from this entrance, sort of on the east side as you come on. So here, what we did is we designed it with the pre-K and K towards the front of the building right there. So in this scenario, the drop off for pre-K would be right there where the parent drop off is. And those students would come in and go right into the pre-K areas right there. And then the core facilities are right there, administration, gym, cafeteria, and the media center and music and art. So all of this space is right here, is serving the entire student population. So pre-K and K don't have to go very far. They don't have to go through the other grades there. They sort of kept a little bit segregated and from the rest of the students. We still have a service loop that also is an emergency loop, but this is now a dedicated service loop that goes to the back to the service area right here, where the kitchen is and where the mechanical spaces are. So that all is occurring right back here. The emergency loop all the way around, and very similar in terms of the bar for the academic. In this case, we put all this, took the entire second floor and had it, on the same footprint as the first floor. So those are two variables that can be incorporated into either one of the designs. Once again, the gym is here, so the compromise in some ways is the gym is there, but you still can get to the fields without actually crossing any traffic because there's a walk that takes you right to the fields back there. But it also means that now all the parking is in between the gym and the fields, make sure that there's adequate parking for events either on the field or in the school. And as I said, there's more parking by pushing the building back a little. It gives us the ability to have more parking in the front as well. And the septic field can stay exactly where it is. That could be where the septic is, or the septic could be under this parking lot, and that could be the retention area. So there's options with this. It gives us a little bit more flexibility in terms of how we approach the design, because now we've got a pretty open plan, open area that we can do whatever. The approach would be to demolish the building first and then come back and then build. So the building could shift a little bit. It has a great amount of flexibility. In this scenario, we left the courts where they are and where they currently are as well.
So do you see any significant functionality or operational differences between the new building and the renovated one?
Well, it gives you, in terms of standardization of class sizes, we have an opportunity to do that because in the case of the renovated new with what's existing, we're not going to move the wall 2 feet or 3 feet. And it's just too expensive. It doesn't make fiscal sense. So you can really design spaces. We've talked about, future ready schools or, schools which have flexible spaces, large spaces, small spaces for instructions. We still can do it on the renovated new, where we're building the new classrooms. But this gives us a little bit more flexibility in the overall design. The existing school, can you just go back to the outside? The boiler room is right there. So it's sort of inboard of everything. Now we're creating a new mechanical space right here. But we'll continue to use this boiler room space for some purposes. We haven't not totally defined. Maybe, it could be for IT or it could be for electrical or however that gets decided, but that space is there. With the new building, what happens is we can, can decide where all the programs go and really look at it with a different set of eyes. And as I said, one of the things is we've been able to separate out the pre-K and pre-K right to the front of the building, rather than have them as part of this academic wing. And that the reason we've done that, I even looked at, the potential of putting a turnaround here. So if you wanted to, have a separate entrance, and we can do that. It's not that it precludes us from doing that, but there wouldn't be as much of a reason to do it. I think the pre-K pick and drop up is off hours from the other pickup and drop off, right? Or is it?
It's staggered by like 20 minutes.
20, so it's somewhat staggered. Yeah. So, and then if it's a half day pre-K, then it's once again that time is also different. So, so it gives us options, right? And then you can do it as a separate pre-K drop off or part of the existing, but the options are there, and it wouldn't be a lot to have a separate pre-K. This also gives you a little bit more room for a playground and front right by the pre-K area.
There are 30 more parking spaces in this option. Is there a parking demand that we're trying to hit?
Generally, your day-to-day operations for schools, you will always have adequate parking for that, you know. And so if you just take the number of students, you know, and make sure that the fifth graders aren't driving to school, then we're good. But generally, if you look at the teacher population, where generally there's an issue is when you have events for its parents to come in, you know. So it's all the special events where we're all going there for teacher. And what do they call that? Concerts. Yeah. So that's when the true demand on the site is felt. And so in this scenario, we've got, you know, there's plenty of parking here.
So I know there's been discussions about working with the church and creating a walking trail for parking. And obviously, if that's an agreement, you know, it'd be great to minimize our impervious area as much as we could.
And at this point, what we're doing is not show as much, but yes,
Okay.
you know, ideally, that discussion would occur, and that's okay. We don't really need 200 parking spaces. We can live with
But
150.
I agree with you on, you know, once again, pre-K and K just freaks me out in terms of their traffic generation and separating them, obviously, you know, can be good. And in this design also, you have a, you know, service parking area that can essentially function as a turnaround loop as well. So
You actually had a design, you know, the same design with that modification on it. I just, you know, this is what we presented to the state as well, so I didn't, like, we only had a limited amount of time, so we just presented this option.
in terms of construction, obviously, there's something to be said for nuking a site, you know, and then just starting over.
Yeah.
How much of a cost difference, time difference is there instead of having to try and meet stuff and make existing, you know, facilities work? How much more efficient is essentially nuking it and starting over as opposed to reusing what we have?
I mean, there are certain efficiencies because your demolition can be done quickly and swiftly. There are many cases where we just do like a bulk demo because we're going to run into, you know, there'll be some testing done, but if there's PCBs in the caulk, then we have to look at that individually, whether it makes sense to abate the building before we completely demo it. That's what's going to be time consuming. If there's asbestos in PCBs, we have to do some of that abatement. So the timing on that is no different than the timing of renovating, because in that scenario, the building is unoccupied. The first thing that they would do is start the abatement process. But in the renovation, renovator's new scenario, the contractor might opt to also start the foundation work for the academic wing in the back at the same time. Whereas with the new building, you really have to do the demos first. I think overall, both these options would take about the same time. The key is we're not disturbing the fields, so it's not that we're building on the fields and we got to demo in order to build a new space. So that comes into play in terms of managing it, timeline.
Yeah, I'm just struggling to see the benefit of an $11 million additional cost.
Most
Yeah,
of
I
them
mean-
did such a good job on renovating.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the building too. So when we look at buildings, if the existing structure is terrible condition, you want to renovate it, that I try to stay away from that. But if it's a really solidly built building that's got good bones, that's not a bad option. If I were doing it, I prefer to tear it down and do new, because it's just a lot less. I could actually gain usually on the schedule that way.
But what's
All in
our,
all, it's about the same as long as the existing building is.
so what's our assessment of Memorial as a building to renovate as new then? Is it a
The
viable?
building is a very viable building. I mean, when you walk through it, you look at it, it's not, things aren't falling apart. I mean, there's some, infrastructure issues that are more MEP related rather than structural related. And even the building looks like it, it's not as aesthetically, the building looks quite well, looks nice. you certainly can, we're looking at secure vestibules and doing various things to it. But it wouldn't be something where you're just trying to dress up a really tired building. In this case, you have two good options.
I might have missed it, but you have a couple of music rooms on C2 and C3, but I only see one on C1. Am I missing the other music classroom?
It should be two.
I probably missed it.
Yeah, you can't see the line is under the music room. It's the second music room. There's a
This one
line. It says music right underneath it.
Oh, okay. Thank you. No, you do have two. I see that. It's just the music is written right on top of the line. On C1, so you can't see it. Okay.
But we have any comments or questions on C2? Honestly, you can always go back.
So option C3 is really one where we're saying, let's build a new facility while the site is occupied. And so what we did is we looked at the site, and I think we've shown some of these options in earlier versions of our concept. But what we found is right over here, I mean, there's a fairly steep grade. So when you're doing, you're really cutting down a lot of the vegetation there, and you got to deal with the grades. So this is a little bit more difficult to build back here. You can, but it's not, it's not ideal. Over here is your septic field, so you have to keep the school functioning, so you really can't build on top of the septic field as a location to build a school right there. Or if you did, you'd have to first build the septic field for the new building, for the existing building, and it would get complicated. Then we looked at, building up in the field, sort of the northwest corner there. And that's an option. You can build there. This school would be operating, we have access to the back here. So you could set up all your staging area, your construction back there, complete the building. Then once the building is completed, demolish this and so on. So that's a viable option. We'll look at more details. And then the next option we looked at is over here in the front of the building. This is where we said, okay, what if we acquire that property from the church and have the building closer to the front of this of the road? The challenge becomes that again, you start to, and we'll look at this, but you're beginning to get access around it. We needed a little bit more space than what was needed over the time when the first study was done. But the other thing here is once you start looking at space, you have to go through a space acquisition process with the state, especially if you want to be reimbursed for that space, because you have to build on your own property. So to be able to do that, to acquire that, if you acquire it later on, that's fine. There's no issues there. But to acquire it now before you build on it is going to add time to your, to the overall process, because you have to go through this an appraisal process. You have to get several appraisals. The state comes out and does an evaluation of the site, and then you have to do a site analysis and soil conditions analysis of that site before you can, that they will say, okay, accept you for you to purchase it. Now, if you go through the process, they do participate in the reimbursement on that site acquisition. So there's a plus and a minus to it. But overall, what that would do is add more time to the process in terms of getting a project underway. So, I don't think you're going to be able to go through that process, acquire the site, and then be ready to build in the next cycle. So that's something, unless you really felt that was important to do and to locate the building at that sort of southeast corner, then we would have to, get into more details with it. But did an overall evaluation, and I did this specifically also to show the state, that we looked at several options of a new building on the existing site while the existing school continues to operate. So here's the layout for the new building on the existing site, with the building up sort of in the northwest corner of the site. And you can see what ends up happening is, your building is over here. We've tried to use the same criteria in terms of access to the fields, access to parking. In this scenario, this is the bus loop, and that's the parent drop off. The design is so that there's a sort of a boulevard entrance here. The parents would go straight up and drop off and then come back out. Whereas the bus traffic would turn off right there, drop off the students and then come back out. We would maintain this parking in the front of the building. That's an option where you're showing it there as well. But the fields then get sort of dispersed around the site. So we've got fields right here. We've got some fields on where the current building is. And we're pretty close to the property line, and there are some challenges in terms of grading for the fields, but it can be done. So this is an exercise to say, okay, if we located the building there, what are the options and what are the implications of it? But generally, when you're building new and you're trying to look around an existing building, it becomes, it's not the best location, because obviously you're compromising the location of the building by trying to maintain the existing building, the operation of the existing building. So this was the third option that we presented.
Obviously, a lot of wasted space, just accessing the site, take up a lot of space, and I think Eric would have a coronary trying to maintain, fields all over the place. And it looks like it just makes maintenance and, everything extremely difficult. I like the idea of the building back there and fields up front, but I don't see it.
I mean, there could be other options here. In this scenario, we could say, okay, these courts need to go, and we put the courts right there so that the fields are more contiguous. Once again, everything, we were trying to do this in a way that it's economical to, it makes sense from an economic point of view. So there are options, but they could be more expensive.
If I could say real quick, I think the reason we wanted to have this on here and why it was important is if you wanted to consider the occupied option, because we know what the displacement is going to do for several years to 3 other campuses potentially. But, if we're okay with doing that, then we don't really need to look at this. I would say in some of the projects I've been associated with, having the building set back a bit, it really does help with the traffic inflow and outflow, especially at these big events. And even from like a safety and security standpoint, the one you showed before where it's up against the road, I don't think that would really be recommended from that perspective. So it's something else to put eyes on, weigh the pros and cons with the other options.
Now, this option actually takes longer to construct.
Right, because the building would need to be constructed first, and then we would have to do the demo because the existing school would be operational. So timing would be critical, because you can't just say in the middle of the year that, oh, we finished the building, now let's get the kids out of there. I mean, because there's a transition, and it's not just the kids that are in that school, but it's a transition for the entire district. So you really ideally want to do that over the summer, or so that they come to the school starting in September.
And I think a lot of this too, also just there's a lot more site work related to this, where we're seeing a lot of parking where the existing building is. So it's kind of a sequence of events that would need to take place to kind of complete the overall site, which kind of extends that.
And you have to do it while people are
Correct.
using the site.
Correct.
Yeah, so normally this transition occurs over a summer period to wrap up the construction of the new building and start the demo of the next one. And having the main access through the existing buildings
it's
I
gonna be
think problematic. It would have to be rerouted around that demo footprint.
Right, we would have to, I mean, this is the final plan, so we would have to develop temporary plans in terms of how you would access the site for construction, and there would be, what's the temporary site look like once the building is complete, the demo and other work is ongoing. So there's a variety of things that would need to be developed.
Yeah, I think it's a really good exercise because that is a huge issue, you know. Okay, you've built the building, you have to demo the old one. How are you getting anybody into the new building? You know, they're going through an active construction site for quite a while, so.
We're actually doing a building like that right now. We're in the final design phase of it, and we've had to develop a temporary site plan. So we're gonna build a new building, and with that new building, we're gonna build part of the site, and we're gonna demo the old building, and then complete the rest of the site. But all the while, you know, we're gonna have to work around it. And they were actually at one point considering having that existing building serve as a swing space for other projects. And realize that, you know, all of a sudden the number of students on that site would be so large that it would create almost like a parking and circulation nightmare, so that they backed off of that. But those are some of the issues that can be done. It's not, I'm not gonna say it can't be done because we're doing it, but it adds some complication.
You also lose all your athletic fields in the interim.
In the, because you're building, you know, moving them and then rebuilding. So it's a matter of how many assets do you try to maintain with minimum work to them, because you still want to improve them, because you don't want to completely rebuild them, because that's a lot more expensive.
I think that's, I think, like I said, I think it's a great exercise because somebody will say, it seems like, you know, theoretically, easiest thing to do is just build the building off-site and then just switch everything over, but the reality is it's significantly more complex than, you know, both of the other options and.
Oh,
by a lot.
I think without question, and the only reason I've ever seen this done is if there's a segment of the public that doesn't accept the temporary relocation, which is not insignificant either. So you take the construction complexity over what it
I
does
think-
to the children and the teachers and all that to be on other campuses for a couple of years.
I think the construction complexity is far worse in this situation than a temporary relocation and moving back in because.
There's
Well,
a lot of
again,
possible,
that's-
like, what ifs too.
Yeah.
that could happen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's so many things that can go wrong during the demolition. If things don't go right, you've now you're in a construction site for, you know, 2 seasons and, the school's occupied and the fields still aren't built.
Yeah, I'm not
and-
disagreeing.
And it's just the daily,
Yeah.
as well as you plan these projects, you know, the dust comes up or somebody's installing a roofing, the smell is, you know, all around the
Noise.
building and people, so there's just so many different things you have to deal with that frankly, by the end of the project, everybody is just like, yeah.
And the reality is that, you know, you're kind of still, I mean, the site's kind of an odd site. You're somewhat constrained and, you know, you can't do, I mean, you really can't do as much as you would think moving the building to a different spot. And as you said, the best location for the building is the one they already have.
I have no clue on this, but it seems like that new building is perilously close to the state park. Are there any regulations the state will say, oh, you can't build there because it's too close to water and nice natural resources? 'Cause that's pretty close.
As long as we maintain the setback requirements.
Yeah.
So
So you've never seen any issues. This is kind of unique in that it does border a state park really close. Yeah.
I just had a few questions. The T, the S and the M, can you just remind me can you tell me what those?
You have toilets.
Yeah.
S is storage and M is mechanical.
Okay, and so are any of these, I guess I'm looking at the C1 and C2. Are there elevators in NDP? Or
In both of them, it would be elevators at the 2-story section.
at the 2-story, okay.
Correct. So plan wise, you're probably not seeing a little box. It's fairly small from a circulation space, but that is factored in from a pricing exercise. So once plans get refined, those would be kind of components that would find the most logical place for them to be located.
Okay. And then I just had 2 questions as far as pricing and then possible layout. My first one, although I really like the C2, I am uncomfortable with safety wise. Those classrooms, I guess it's the 3Ks and the pre-K being right in the very front of the school. That's actually one of the things that we were always nervous about, or we are nervous about with Brewster. I liked how in the other plan, it's the cafeteria and the kitchen, it's more of like those kind of those structures in front and the classroom's more protected. Yeah, just pure safety. Is there any way in that C2 to move those K and pre-K classes more like in the middle, like put the cafeteria and the stage and the kitchen in the front? And then move those kindergartens maybe before the art room or the music room?
The great thing about this option is we can do anything.
Okay, so that is an option,
So-
okay.
Because we'd already shown you an option with the pre-K in the back, I thought it'd be good to give you different types of
Yeah.
layouts.
Okay.
So you could, you can analyze them like just as you're doing, to say, you like this better than that. And the good thing is, if you go with the new option, we can implement it. It's harder with the existing option to change things around, but in the new option, we can do anything.
Yeah,
But a pro of this- Sorry, go ahead. Nope.
The other thing too, you don't forget, this project, the security package will be much, much more than what you're used to even having now.
Yeah.
That's gonna be.
Rusty, a pro of this particular one would be easier drop off for the pre-K. I think you'd mentioned that. For the,
Right, because-
number of minivans that'll be going in there.
Right, but that's not to say that you can't have a separate drop off here as well, So, and if we were to change that, it really would be that these functions would be over here. And then the pre-K could be back here, or we could take this and just create sort of an L shape. In that case, we would have to provide a pre-K drop-off area in the back, just as we're doing with the C1 option.
But I do like from a security standpoint, having administrative and larger functions facing the street and then having all the classrooms and stuff further back. Yeah, I think it does create more of a secure setup where, classroom windows aren't, street facing.
No, I think that's right, and this shouldn't be the deciding point either, but with this design too, a lot of what we might consider joint community use spaces are towards the front. And even people that you're bringing in during the day for those large events don't have to travel where you don't want them traveling.
Yeah.
And it kind of sets back.
So flop those two.
Yeah.
It makes it much easier to cordon off the student areas
Yes,
from the public areas.
Exactly.
I mean, one of the things, really the front of the building in some ways is right here, because the main drop off is right on that side. The north side of the building, and most people will be coming in here. This would be dedicated to parent drop off, but the perception will be that this is, that is further to the front, and we can certainly move it, so that's not a difficult to do.
I think that was a good point there.
I just have one question too for C1. I forget where I saw the difference in the square footage, but it was pretty significant between C1 and C2. And to kind of go along with what Bob was asking too, what would the price increase be if we were to add more classrooms upstairs? Just because I'm thinking potentially if we needed more classrooms in the future, especially this allots for only 2 pre-K. So potentially if we were to need more than just 2 pre-K classes, it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of room to kind of move around. So if we were to add more classrooms upstairs, that would give us more ability to still stay in this one building, which is ideally what we're trying to do.
So,
So the
I
possible
mean,
expansion, is that what
It's-
cause- or is that above where it says future
This
expansion?
one only has one. Oh, okay.
there's expansion right above, so there's space right there for future expansion. But because I know a lot of people say, well, we can just build the second floor of the building. I don't subscribe to that because that does mean that your first floor, nobody wants to build a building above occupied the classroom, we can, look at that configuration and add more classrooms to the upper floor and just reduce the length of the of that academic bar that's there. The only challenge becomes that you don't want to start splitting up grades. That part of the grade is on the second floor, so we'll take a hard look at that. I believe that's what was driving it. And also kind of utilize all the classrooms on that first floor and in the existing building. So we can take another look at that and we'll see.
Yeah, because I know ideally we would start the school opening with what we have, but realistically, they won't always stay that way because grades are always adding or subtracting. So the grades would potentially have to move around a little bit and have that flexibility. And I know like, even if there might be 2 or 3 classrooms that weren't occupied for this opening, it could be used for some kind of resource or some other room that teachers really do need to kind of have that smaller group setting. But then it also has that potential to be used as a classroom also.
So these are designed for the maximum population. So when this opens, you will not be, you'll still have 3 more years of growth within the district. But even beyond that, we have one space in each of the programs and each of the options, which is a classroom size space, which is really not assigned. So I just sort of made it the color of administrative space. The reason we did that is, you know, as we look at each grade level that's going through, there is a time when one grade has 5 more students. And yes, you could probably absorb them in the other classes, but again, these are projections, and if the projection is more than 5, you know, you have to have some flexibility. So that space is designed to be the size of the classroom, but it's just not, and it could be called the resource room and then used as a classroom if ever needed.
Right, yeah.
And if we're already building, you know, there's a partial second floor on there, you know, and, you know, a second floor roof. I'm just wondering how much more expensive would it be to extend that second floor out another
You
40
could do
feet?
that, don't forget, the whole thing is, the state is, you're getting your square footage based on your projected population,
Right.
and that's it.
Okay.
Now, you could do that, but you're gonna pay 100% of that cost.
But is there a significant additional cost to building a second floor? If we've already got a lot.
So
of
you're
the-
saying extend the second.
Yeah, just
floor.
extend the second floor out and keep. it
No,
as
no, it's cost
occupied space.
effective during the design, but you're not gonna get any reimbursement
reimbursement.
at all.
Right, but
Well-
if the cost is the same, yeah, if the cost is fairly close to, I mean, you're already building your first floor, you're already building a roof on it, you're essentially building another
Yes,
8 feet higher.
It just comes down to what the state is gonna reimburse
Sure.
you for. You can do whatever you want and pay 100% of it,
Mhm.
but as far as reimbursement, you're limited to square footage. And let me just say, because a lot of people nowadays, when they see a brand new school, elementary or high school, they walk in and they're shocked how small they are. The state has really, and Rusty, you can, you know, talk to this. It's much, much smaller than we're used to in older buildings. So one of the benefits of having renovate an existing building is we often get bonus square footage. You know, if the gym is already there, it's already oversized, we get to keep it. So that sometimes we try to focus on that because you actually end up with a little bit bigger building if you rent as new as opposed to brand new.
So in that option, I just wanted to bring you back to this slide, which is the state slide. When we did the calculations, we have approximately 3,700 square foot that we can build and still be within 100% reimbursement on the renovation, not on the new. On the new, we're maxed out to what they're allowed. But on the renovation, we have room for growth. Now, I didn't add that square footage in because I'm trying to maintain a budget here. So I didn't, you know, the original budget was based on a 50,500 square foot addition. So that's what is represented, but we could actually be 54,000 square feet and meet our reimbursement criteria. So if you wanted to,
I think it's a
Fill
worthwhile
that out.
exercise to see, instead of a story and 3/4, do a full 2 stories.
Right.
That's,
Well, I would even go further to say that we should definitely design to a maximum square footage. So if the projection is the 6
On the reno.
whatever, on the rental.
Yep.
Or even new. On the new, you're maxed.
Yeah,
out.
maxed out.
But on the rental, whatever that square footage works out mathematically, we absolutely should build that.
And just from, just from a constructability standpoint, it's easy to extend, you're building this, why stop it and then build a new roof down? It's actually probably cheaper to continue the roof all the way through and.
Well, that,
and just keep it as,
and remember,
in
these are
place.
projections.
Yeah.
These are guesses. We really truly don't know what the population is gonna be, so for the cost, the incremental cost for the maximum square footage that the state will allow, it's definitely worth it.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that's why I'm asking too, is because that's a big fear in this community, is that we're gonna do this and then we're gonna wind up not having enough room.
It also may help sell by building in some flexible space and expansion space. It may help allay some of those fears and help push the project through better.
We wanna, looking at time, we're at 6:17. We wanna go through the comparisons real quick and then the timelines.
So in the comparisons, and they're all pretty similar, above the line, the budget line. With the exception of the fact that, option 3 is longer in terms of duration. There's a little bit more impact on the, I refer to as moderate impact on disruption to education, because the students that are there on site, there will be some disruption in terms, especially when it comes to play fields and just circulation and noise and so on. Now, that's not to say that the other options, if there's no disruption, because actually those kids are going to other schools. So there's that initial disruption when there's space that they're being moved around. But apart from that, the main difference that comes out here is in the financial analysis. The renovation option, and this is based on the 50,500 square foot addition. Which, as you can see, the gross square foot is now 101,000 square feet compared to 98 on the other two. But that's because you're getting that bonus for the existing building. And so that's why your building is slightly larger. But that's the least, has the least impact budget wise, because it's 73 million now. When we build out to the full extent, you can anticipate, let's say you can take that $723 a square foot and multiply it by the square footage that's available. You can see that that's going to be the additional cost. It's probably going to jump to the $78 million number. But the net effect is going to be still there. You're going to have the larger reimbursement. And in all of these, I'm calculating a 2.5% ineligible cost in this, just so that you know, contingencies, anything that you're carrying that is contingency related is considered ineligible by the state. Now, it's only temporarily ineligible. So when we first file your application and we show a construction contingency and we show a design contingency, they say you can't carry that as eligible. But if you expend the money for a contingency item, it is eligible. So ultimately, it really is eligible. And what you will find is that the net delta for certain things, and the very limited items that are ineligible on new construction, and even on a renovated new construction, it's mainly a function of if you're doing something offsite that's ineligible, but there are other construction related items that can come up that are ineligible. So it's safe to carry a slightly lower number, and I'm carrying the 2.5% ineligible in all three scenarios. So there's a potential to gain that 2.5%, but that's not a small amount of money that in eligible costs. But based on that, I mean, that's consistent in all three scenarios. So one, we're at 48.86% eligible reimbursement. The other two are 38.93% eligible reimbursement. And then you can see the numbers. We're going from 10.9, but what I'm referring to the total PTA project cost, to 21.9 to 24.2 in those three scenarios. Now, the 10.9, as we build that out, will go up.
Where is the demolition cost for the two schools in this figure? Is this?
So we did not,
Check it out.
we have not carried those costs, but those are carried
Another 3 to 5 million.
for Brewster and Lyman, yes. Because I think the last discussion, that was
Because the intent is not to demo.
not to demo them, it's to repurpose them in some other way.
Go over the timelines and then we have a discussion on those.
And the timelines again are very similar for the first two options. And, the third option is where it becomes. We've extended by 6 months, but, in all scenarios, just know that, you do run into issues, but the only time, I recommend we've moved students, mid-year, but usually it's, if that move happens, it's because it's unavoidable and there's some kind of an issue occurs that, like supply chain issues, except that we were all facing earlier on, those tended to extend projects out. So even those moves were made either in the December break or April break, but, so that they were all manageable.
So looking at I think. And my hope was to go through and find an option at this point. We can start talking about it. I'm wondering if we need a little bit more time, maybe even a virtual joint meeting. To digest some of this before we give a recommendation, unless you guys feel strongly. At this time. I don't know if building wants to weigh in on options.
I know where I want to go, but I don't know if it's, I don't know if we want to allow everybody to digest it more.
When our next meeting starts at 6:30, so,
I know, that's my whole point.
yeah, we'd ideally hope that
Yeah.
we'd have enough time for that tonight. I think what it is important is that when Lindsay and Lucy and Kim and I kind of brainstormed on this, we're kind of thinking an early June referendum. If that made sense to the others, again, it's not my decision, obviously, it's the board's decision, but the thought was, I don't want to jinx this here, but we're feeling pretty good about our budget right now and where it stands, and we'd like to get that approved through the voters and not complicate that decision with a joint referendum. But I think it was you, Lindsay, that pointed out if we put it beyond graduation, regardless of how it goes, there's going to be accusations of that was done deliberately, and we want parents to weigh in on it where they're in here, and the greater likelihood of that. So,
So we have our building committee meeting next week. I mean, do we want to just make that an agenda item where we provide a recommendation, or do you want something?
We could
closer?
just change it to a joint meeting if we want to use that time and space.
John, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't mind giving a recommendation now, but certainly we have other members who aren't here, so it's certainly open to whatever.
I'd hate to not give Nick a chance to.
Yeah.
He's here. He's
He's
Oh,
on.
is he?
Yeah.
He's been quiet.
Hi, Nick.
Okay.
We don't have much else on the agenda, we're not make it a joint meeting, do we?
I don't think there's, no, I don't think there's
it's
much other
your
than.
agenda, so you can do whatever you want.
Could we add this just as an item that the board's gonna make, that the building committee makes a recommendation on the option?
Well, I'd like to make it joint if we can, only because I think we've got some digesting on the board level too.
Okay.
And some discussion there that want to come back.
There-
But
there is a
do you
Board of
want-
Ed
do you
budget
want our-
session right after, so.
Do you want
You guys.
our recommendation independent of yours or combined or?
It doesn't matter. A discussion wise, it doesn't have to be something that, we're coming with one, you're coming with another. I think we all really listen to each other and
Okay.
want to make the
A
best
consensus
decision.
would be ideal.
But I do think we're close. I just don't, I don't think we're there yet without some digesting.
Yeah, make it a joint session as long as we keep our items on the agenda. Eric has a lot of stuff.
And
When is
Kim,
that? That's
correct me
5
if I'm
o'clock
wrong,
next
but
Wednesday?
I'm sorry,
When is that building? It's 5 o'clock next.
it's, yes, followed by the 6 o'clock budget. So
Yeah.
again, for board members that are hopefully coming for budget, it would be getting here a little bit earlier.
We can do it towards the tail end of ours.
And I think if I didn't, maybe you remember Rusty or Kim from the call, but the board needs to adopt a resolution tied to one of these options prior to that application being submitted. And so it probably could push as far as our June board meeting. I'd personally like to tee it up for the May board meeting if we're ready. That way it goes out before referendum and not after. It doesn't matter the way the application is written, as I understand it, is it just says we're committed to doing this pending a successful referendum. And that means the deadline. Is that right?
There's just 3 resolutions and there's other documentation that needs to be put together. Education specification that the board needs to approve. So there's quite a process that needs to happen. So the sooner you can make a determination on an option, we can get the rest of it, because we do have to put the educational specification, build it around the option that you select.
Yeah.
So then that gives us.
I don't see
more
too
time
long
to
in
do
this
that.
any further than the individual.
2 quick
Well,
things.
no, I'm
to-
just saying, the only reason I'd say come back next week is it's fresh in our minds. We've
Yeah.
already kind of had discussion. I know, and it gives you guys the most amount of time. I'd like to be able to give that to you today. I just think we're there. We're not there yet. But we're close.
So next week's great.
Yeah, and if I could just 2 quick things before we end.
Yep.
Again, I've not been through this process before. You have been with the state, but she did give us favorable comments on all the work that the board and the building committee and Rusty and Kim and everyone has done. So I think you guys should hear that. And she also said the state always looks favorably on plans that involve consolidation of schools. Which makes kind of sense because they would reimburse us the 5 buildings that would need to be renovated at some point. They'd much rather do this. So I just think that validates the decision that you guys have made at this point. I think it's important to recognize that.
And I think it was huge because a lot of times when you meet with the state, it's not always positive results. And she was very positive and she said it's a solid plan. So I think that, and she'd be a big.
Is there a
person
recommendation
to
from
go.
her and when the application should be in by that would be better?
No, they don't care. As long as it's in by June 30th, they don't care when you do it. But she did say the referendum, she will need the results no later than the 15th. So if we were to have a referendum, we'd have multiple referendums. Our last one really could only be, say, November 1st. So that we could get the results certified and submitted to her. So that was the only timeline she kind of really enforced.
Just a quick question. Obviously, if this is going to referendum, people are going to vote on it. Is there the ability to have any sort of imagery or?
Certainly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I
Talk about that
thought
next
this was a
week, too.
bang up job. Again,
No,
great job.
The reason we modeled these
Great job.
plans is because we wanted to develop that into an.
Before we go, number 4, public comment. Is there any in-person public comment? Is there any online public comment? If you could unmute. And raise your hand. Okay, we'll have another opportunity in a few moments. I will take a motion to adjourn. So, second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all very much. Take a 5-minute break. You can have it. Starting.
Floors that weren't there.
Yeah. Those are safe.
Of course. Okay, good evening. I want to call the Regional School District 13 Board of Education regular meeting, March 13th, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. You can guys get the religion.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, thank you guys all for coming. First, number 2, approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
Second by Jason. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? You abstain. All right, motion passes. Number 3, presentation, Ontario Regional High School activities update. I'll hand it over to Deb.
Good evening. Thanks for having us back. Our second of 3 installments, I think we agreed upon this year. I have 2 wonderful learners with me this evening. A senior captain of our softball team, Paige Konopka, will be doing our student life update. And a junior 3-sport athlete, Noah Levesque, will be doing our sports update. So I will hand it over to them. If you have questions, they'll try to answer them.
Hi, I'm going to be presenting some of the upcoming events and accomplishments that have happened in CRHS. First, we have our capstone, which happened last Friday, March 8th, and it is where 80 kids, seniors, will be presenting after job shadowing their future careers all through last semester to be presented last Friday. I did my capstone on pre-K special ed and speech pathology. And I also got to present in front of a senator. Also, the robotics program had their state tournament. Their nicknames are Robo Devils and the Robo Demons. DECA also completed a career development conference. People who have won are honored as state finalists, which are Alex Wozniak, Nora Huey, and Estella Perez. We also have a state championship for the sales project, which is Dia Patel, who will be competing at the international level in Annenham, California, from April 27th to April 30th. We also hosted a CT Debate Association tournament where 11 schools have attended. Our upcoming events at CRHS, March 15th, DECA is hosting Mr. Cog, which is where a couple of senior boys perform an act or a performance of choice in front of judges who are teachers and are asked questions and then discussed, who will then be crowned Mr. Cog. Following after that, the juniors will be taking the SAT on March 20th. CRHS is also having a spring musical called Bye Bye Birdie, which will be taking place March 21st to 22nd and the 23rd. Also, musical students will be starting spring break early, and they will be going to New York to compete and see a Broadway show. And 5 CRHS students' artwork will be featured in the Shoreline Futures art show. Their names are Ruby Chella, Brooke Conifal, Ayana Liz, Lindsay Lowe, and Isabella Weisberg. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob might have a question. He'll wait.
There's an answer to it. You can ask later.
Later.
Are you or Claire gonna be the catcher?
No comment.
Mysteries. All right. I have the winter sports roundup.
Yeah, it'll slide up for you.
There we go. All right, so starting off, we have boys basketball. The boys finished their season with an overall record of 12-8 in the Division 5. The team qualified as the 5th seed in the Shoreline Conference tournament before losing to Haddam Gillingwood in the quarterfinals. The team also qualified as the number 9 seed in the CIAC Class S state tournament and received the first round bye week before losing in the second round to number 9 the number 8 Coventry Patriots, sorry. Girls basketball. The girls finished the season with an overall record of 11-9 in the Class S. The team qualified, is this loud or am I?
No, you're good.
Okay,
It is
sorry.
loud, but they can hear it at home.
The team qualified as a 5th seed in the Shoreline Conference tournament. The team also qualified as the 16th seed in the CIAC Class S state tournament, advancing to the state quarterfinals before losing to the number 8 Bowling Bulldogs. Season highlights are they upset the number 1 seed in the second round of the CIAC Class State tournament. Moving on to indoor track. This is the boys. The boys team had another successful season, finishing 3rd in the Shoreline Conference Championship in February. It was a great showing by the team. The boys indoor track and field team finished 14th in their Class S state championship at the Floyd Little Athletic Center in New Haven. We had some great showings at the top six finishers below, including sophomore Charlie Dallas as the Class S runner-up for the 600 meter. Charlie also qualified for the CIAC State Open meet in New Haven. The 4x400 meter relay, Ethan Feinberg, Justin Rowe, Jack Franciscat, and Charlie Dallas was 4th place overall. So proud of. Indoor track girls. The girls team also had a successful season, finishing 3rd in the Shoreline Conference Championship in February. It was a great showing by their team as well. The girls indoor track and field team finished in 7th place in their Class S state championship at the Floyd Little Athletic Center in New Haven. We had some great showings and top 6 finishers below, including Allison Vigu as a senior and as Class S state champion in the pole vault, which is amazing. Moving on, I got a little bit more of this. Allison also placed 3rd in the CIAC State Open meet and earned a medal for 6th place overall in the Nike Indoor National meet in New York City this past weekend. That's crazy. Girls indoor track and field complete results, Class S championship, sorry. 4x400 meter relay is Estella Perez, Jane Waterman, Allison Vigu, and Callie Beebe finishing 3rd place overall. Pole vault, senior Allison Vigu, 1st place Class S state champion. Now moving on to cheerleading. The cheer squad finished 3rd in the conference cheerleading competition in February and competed in the Class S Open. The Class S Open cheerleading competition last weekend. Congratulations on their season and best of luck to all senior members in their future plans. Sorry. Swimming. We had 2 swimmers competing as a collaborative team with Sheehan High School and Lyman Hall High School this past season. Both swimmers, senior Kayla Kern and junior Winnie Zhao, competed in the SCC championships before Coggins, that's a typo, sorry, that's my fault, for Coggins. Winnie Zhao also qualified for the CIAC Class S Swim Divisional Championship in the 200 individual medley. I don't know if I said that right. And the 100 breaststroke. Moving on to gymnastics. Freshman Riley Dorsey competed alongside Daniel Hand High School this past season in the Shoreline Gymnastics Championship in February. Riley had her best results of the season, placing 3rd all around. She also had great individual events, placing 3rd in the floor exercise and 4th place in the uneven bars and 4th place on the balance beam. Boys hockey. Boys ice hockey, sorry. We have student athletes competing in the sport of boys ice hockey as a cooperative team for the SCW Knights, which competes with Westbrook and Southington High School. Southington being the host school. The team finished 5-15 this season. Congratulations to our three senior student athletes, Christos Wheatley, Max Sirico, and Drew Turner. I know that one. We wish our seniors the best of luck in their future plans. Girls ice hockey. We have student athletes competing in the sport of girls ice hockey as a cooperative team with the Guilford Grizzlies, Guilford being the host school. The team finished 3-13 this season. That was quick. Didn't have a lot on that one. And I'm coming up with unified sports. The unified sports team has been very busy and has some big events coming up this spring. On February 15th, they hosted the I Choose to Include pep rallies at Brewster and Lyman Elementary Schools. Students from the elementary schools participated in games which promoted inclusion of athletes of all ability levels. April 1st, Unified is hosting another pep rally at Coggins, and they will be challenging the Coggins teachers to a basketball game. Everybody be there. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. The question is,
You can ask Paige you can ask Paige your favorite question, Bob, if you want to.
Have you made your plans for college yet?
I have. I'm attending Fitchburg State University in the fall to play softball.
Anything else?
Noah, what are your three sports? I know I've seen you in the football book, but what are the other two?
So my three sports are baseball, indoor track, and as you said, football. And this past season for football, we had a really successful season, and you know, we're putting in the work now, getting ready for the next season. Everybody be ready to come out and see some games. I guess we're supposed to have lights, so we'll see. It's gonna be great. We will.
I want, Jimmy did not tell me to prep him for that question.
Good question.
Yeah.
Indoor track, also this year was really, really productive. We had a really great season, and I'm really hoping that baseball can carry that out with the following two sports that I've had prior seasons. And, you know, all the guys are getting ready very early in the season, and we're gonna perform for our school. That's what we got.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Deb. Thanks, Katie. Oh, they're coming back. I just walked out. Okay. Just making sure she's coming back.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Jason.
Oh, we're probably cleared out.
Meeting adjourned.
Yes, please. We'll move on to number 4, public comment. There's no public comment in the room, but if there is public comment online, possibly one attendee, if you're able to unmute or raise your hand, if you wish to speak. Yeah, we'll have another opportunity at the end. I will move on to number 5, approval of minutes. We can make one motion for all three of these. Correct? Yeah, so I would take a motion to approve Board of Education work session, February 7th, 2024. The regular meeting, the Board of Ed, February 7th, 2024, and the work session, February 21st, 2024. Have a motion for that?
So moved.
Bob, second.
Second.
By Jason. Do we have any changes or deletions? I did go through them. I only saw there was a typo on the letter E, but Meg had changed that, so. Unless anyone have the other ones. All right, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion passes. Okay, we're already on number 6. This is amazing. Number 6, superintendent's report, and Doug will apologize because he said it's probably going to be his longest.
No, I'll keep it moving. I realize time changes people in a different place, and you know, major conference basketball tournaments have started tonight. And I don't want you guys looking at your phones, doing those things. So we'll start with the grade level configuration. There's quite a bit that's happened. I think you all know about this, but I just think it's important to give the update for those that haven't. The staffing assignments, the preliminary staffing assignments with all their caveats were sent out at the middle of last month. And so not saying everyone was in love with what they got, but at least they know. That is, the timing of that was deliberate following the budget proposal. Those staffing assignments are tied to the budget proposal as it currently exists. If we have to change the budget in some way that would impact any staffing at those levels, which we don't, that is one of the caveats. And certainly we don't apologize about putting people where we need them, but this is what we intend to do if nothing changes and we do appreciate the staff kind of hanging in there with us and being patient and waiting for this. And as soon as we put that out, the next question was, okay, what happens with packing, with moving, all of those things? So about a week later, all of that information went out. And of course, that also spawned more questions, and we've had conversations with the heads of our unions, and those have gone very well. We've gotten information out, and so that's moving along, and that will be a work in progress. It goes back to last meeting also. That was able to take place because you all gave us the temporary flexibility on what I'll call the purging disposal policy. I don't know what the official name is, but very large dumpsters are going to start appearing on our campuses here shortly, and the encouragement for all the staff, whether they're moving or not, is to take this opportunity to go through maybe 20 years or more of materials that they may or may not be using anymore, and try to purge a bit ahead of the move. So that's all in motion, and that will be taking place. We're set for the movers to come, is it the 17th? Yeah, the Monday after graduation is on a Wednesday, and so that's kind of the drop dead date for all of that to happen, and being led by Kim and others. Everything's going to be color coded and labeled, and we have people to help assemble boxes, and we've really been sensitive to some of the feedback we've gotten, especially from groups that have moved multiple times in recent memory, who've said this is what they liked about what happened before, and this is what they didn't like. So that is all up and moving. Another thing that I'm glad to be able to share with you, again, you've probably seen this in the Schools Friday updates, is the schools felt it was very important to start, now that we're getting in kind of the mid-spring, to have some opportunity for parents and families of children that are going to be reassigned to different buildings to have kind of, it's not going to be a big, over the top type thing, but just kind of a drop in where they can walk the building, ask questions. Our understanding is that even though the principals haven't required the teachers to be part of that, most of the teachers that are available are stepping up and attending, which is going to be great because they want to welcome these folks. And so those are staggered starting next week, I believe. Yeah, the 19th, the 26th, and April 2nd. That would be Brewster, Memorial, and Lyman. And again, we have some families that might be going to all three campuses, so we didn't want to do them on the same night or even the same week. The principals also want to make sure, if you get questions from folks, if that evening is a conflict for folks, they can contact the principal and set up another time to do that, as they've always done for folks. But they did want to have one concerted effort and make that available. We've heard that from some of the PTA representatives that we've heard from. I think they wanted to hear about this months ago, and we tried to ask them to just, let us kind of get through the process, that there's a point at which it makes sense to do this. And we feel like it makes sense to do this now. And although they can bring their children with them, these evenings aren't really designed for the children. The children are going to have their opportunities to do their kind of what we would normally do for transitioning from grade level to grade level, but it'll be a little bit more complicated and involve more of the learners this year, obviously, because of the reconfiguration moves. And I really applaud our principals. They felt like the parents probably want to do this first before their children do it. And so that's why we set it up in this order. But those visits will take place more in their traditional timeline, probably in May. Again, they want to navigate that around field days and standardized testing and all the things that tend to clutter up those calendars. But they're already planning for those visits as well. And then the last thing I will mention on this, unless there's an objection, it doesn't really require a board vote per se. But one of the things that was asked by the union very early on was to be sensitive to the time for those teachers that have to relocate either in a building or across buildings. And remember, there's kind of the haves and the have-nots. We have two buildings that really aren't affected by this at all, and they're just kind of quietly saying, hey, good for you guys. And then others that are affected in a more regular way. So the ask was, could we try to make even the beginning of the year a little bit less encumbered? And so the plan for this year is to move our convocation to a asynchronous virtual convocation, because that's a lot of time to get people together, and that's a few hours that we can kind of give back to them. And so we'll still do the regular convocation program. We'll just record it, probably like we did during COVID. I wasn't here for one of those, but I think most people did. And again, then for those folks, that will get in their kind of inbox to watch when they can, along with the 17 other videos that Kevin makes them watch. Which in fairness to Kevin are all state requirements. But
It's the highlight of their summer, though.
you know, we
Fire
can't,
extinguisher and electrical safety never.
yeah.
Email every year.
Yeah.
How to wash your hands properly and all those things. They are
Human
important.
trafficking is coming up
Yeah.
soon. Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Mhm.
I don't think I'm opposed to that at all. It would be nice to see if we could have something, even if there's like a half hour, an hour time frame in that week. Or at least we could, the board could meet with the staff, or at least seeing the staff before the beginning of the year. I don't know if there's something in between.
Yeah, I don't, the key with convocation is it's getting everyone together in one spot. And again, if you guys feel strongly about it, I'm not married to this. It's something we brainstormed with the union, and the union rep had actually said, a lot of districts went to this during COVID and haven't really gone back just because of the logistical challenges. I mean, I think it's nice to get people together and get them in the same room and feed them and all of those things. I want to say this as tactfully as I can. I don't know that they all see it that way. And
If the
like-
union's requesting it, and
Well,
I think that's
yeah.
the least we could do.
Right, and I think it's a question that comes up every year. It's a really nice thing, but I also think in their heads, they're thinking about unpacking their classrooms and working on whatever.
Every
curriculum's
minute's
coming and-
crucial. I mean, it just seems like
It's a simple.
once that roller coaster
It
starts,
seems
you're not
reasonable
ready.
to
It's
me,
not
and-
gonna go well.
Yeah, and so, you know, you'll have to be recorded, I'll have to be recorded, we'll still do Teacher of the Year and all the awards, we'll record Kevin doing all his stuff that we enjoy, and it'll be a different experience, but it does, I think, acknowledge that this is gonna be a different year, and I think it'll lower anxieties a little bit more for those folks that have to move. So any questions about anything I share? Again, thank you to the staff that have done so much good work in this space.
So the teachers that don't need to make any moves, I mean, is there? I mean, it doesn't seem equitable, like,
not.
okay, you don't have to do this and you do that. I mean, is there any way we can use that resource to kind of help maybe the teachers that are moving? I don't know, not the hall stuff,
If
but
they have
just,
friends.
I don't know. I mean, I don't want that to become a friction issue among people as well. I mean, we see it in the workplace all the time with minimum wage going up and how come I'm making this much and you almost make this much? You don't know that. You don't know anything. I mean, there's so many things that could happen.
I'm willing
I
to
mean, what-
volunteer a day.
Well, I was gonna say, what is the plan to move stuff? Like I mean, I've seen it be, and this is really intense, but like they hire the kids over the summer and take pictures of a classroom. They pack it, they move it, they unpack it. Like I said, that's one extreme. I think the other extreme is see you next year, bring your stuff. And I think there's gotta be someplace in between there.
We're in the middle.
You wanna
Yeah.
explain?
So we have professional movers, so we did budget for in this year's
Yep.
budget. And we have all color coded labels,
Yeah.
so one school's red, one school's purple. So if you're moving from Brewster to Lyman, you're gonna use Lyman's colored label and you're gonna write your room number and your name on it. Teachers are responsible for packing their boxes. We are actually having students put the boxes together for it, so they don't have to assemble them. But they will have to pack them, and that's what we kind of ask them to do. If you finish a unit, pack it.
Yeah.
Or you wait till the last day, whatever works
Right.
for you. And then all those we ask them to take personal items, fragile items, anything like that. Maybe they can take them themselves. We move it for them. Now, the unpacking, I'm considering having maybe some students come and help, but oftentimes you want to unpack your own room. So maybe it's library books, this, box goes in these shelves, but in terms of the actual teachers, I'll have that resource available. I'm just not sure.
The teacher, if certain staff wanted it, would you be able to just use the volunteer hours from the kids at the high school? And help out?
Yeah,
So I mean,
absolutely.
if that's an option for them, why not at
Right.
least offer it to them if they wanted it?
It'll be a resource they can have. Yeah.
And there's some coordination around that with both the packing side and the unpacking side, because part of our plan, based on what we heard, is every staff member is going to do this when they want to do it. Some may want to stay after school and do it. Some may want to do it, one day and just get it done. And I imagine what will happen, as happens every summer, is once the items are moved, some may want to kind of trickle in over the summer because they want it all set up even before they get back there on the first day. Others it's their vacation, they're showing up that first day and think of like freshman dorm moving or whatever, and that's probably when you can use the extra support. But I don't know how many will choose to do that. I mean, you've been through this before.
I was gonna say, all the ideas are really good. I think the best thing we can do, having, it was inequitable when we moved at Corn, and it just was, and I think Kevin and I handled that the best we could. Everyone was busy. It wasn't like we were sitting around. I think, John, to your point, I think we put something out to the high school students and to the teachers and say, tell us what you want, and we'll try to provide the kids to you. I do know that most of them want to do it themselves. That's especially the elementary way, right? They want to know where everything is, and the color coding was key, and Kim and I had talked about that, and marking your boxes like 1 of 13. So when the custodians or whomever moves them in, they can visually count all 13, you know which one's missing. Those things were absolutely key. Furniture goes missing, you end up finding it or you don't, or you get more furniture. The move went relatively
I think so,
smoothly
yeah.
for what it could do when we moved them into Brewster and Memorial the year we closed Corn. So I know we're copying a lot of those things and encouraging. At that point, we weren't encouraging getting rid of very much stuff, and I love that the board was supportive of that, because I know some people that are teachers around the table know there's a lot of stuff.
That's what I was wondering too, when you look at the lower elementary levels, and there's just so much brought in, personally from home to make it, an environment, and I just want to make sure that all this stuff that they're going to be bringing is coming with them, even if it's stuff that's come out and not just like building equipment.
Well, yes, and we've said that we're probably not gonna be using moving teacher desks and chairs, because there'll be other, but if there's file cabinets,
Bookshelves
you
or
can move that,
benches.
bookshelves, benches, a rug, maybe you need the rug, it just all has to be labeled. If you don't label it, it's not going, so, not that we couldn't find it, but it's gonna stay there, and you might have to come back in.
But I think if it's a personal item,
It should be taken.
we want them to take it home with them, because we don't want to say the mover lost it or damaged it or something.
I was just thinking of
Yeah.
the little, like the nooks and the benches and the bookshelves, that
Yeah.
they use them from year to year, but necessarily aren't district equipment.
Right, and part of it is too, the teachers themselves checking out their new room and even making kind of informed decisions about,
What to bring, what.
we kind of heard it from Rusty. We have all kinds of different sized rooms across these 3 campuses, and again, you might be going to a larger room or a smaller room, but regardless, it might be laid out differently. And so that's the decision. If they want it, then we'll do it for them.
Right, question was, I know, and we had talked about too, and you touched on that, at what point do we, it's not something normally we tell the public or be telling parents, what teachers are gonna be what next year, but is there a certain point where we introduce teams of teachers? And I think we're small enough of a community that it went out to all of us, and so if it went to all of us and all the administrators, it's reached probably the PTOs and the parents, and so the majority of people have, but I worry about the ones that, aren't as connected and just want to know, who's going to be in what grades next year. And I know some of that depends on retirements or resignations that we don't have.
Yeah, I think our method was, in conversations with Kevin and others, this really was about informing employees and getting them, but we wrote these documents in a way that anybody who would request them, we would give them to, and we also deliberately decided not to post them on the website, because one of the reasons is until we get through the budget process, we feel like these are just preliminary assignments. And so I guess we've kind of deferred to, if someone's asked, we would give it to them. But to my knowledge, nobody's really asked us at the district level.
No.
But I think it's because of what you said. We have a lot of staff who are also parents, and I think they probably just forwarded that email all over the place or put it on social media, and we wrote it in a way that we would be comfortable it being out there.
But we could see some pretty significant shifts in teams and buildings if we have some resignations or retirements or
We
some
could.
leaves that aren't coming back.
We could, as is always the case, we don't anticipate any of that right now. And sometimes that even happens over the summer, unfortunately, as people's life circumstances just change. And that's the other kind of cautionary note about publishing something, and then somebody says, wait a minute, you said that person was going to be doing that great at that school, and now, maybe it's because they had said, well, if something opens up there that had been moved involuntarily, we wanted to kind of honor that request through the survey we did. And so I think that was kind of our logic in doing it that way. But certainly if you hear from anybody that wants it, they can contact Kevin and he'll email the layout for any school.
And I think the other question that I had, and I was looking back at past meetings and we talked about the PTOs and events. Has there been any more discussion about collaborative events between the PTOs? I don't know if you have any information on that.
There has been, I don't have any details to share. Do you remember, Kevin? I know
Yeah.
that it's been a part of our conversation and it's, again, it's a little bit awkward for us because we don't control that. We support that. And go ahead.
As I recall, Doug, I think there's going to be an invitation to incoming grades to join PTOs in later PTO meetings this spring. Say, for example, May or June. For example, invite the first grade parents currently at Brewster to join the John Lyman PTO meeting in May for incoming second graders. So I think there are those opportunities for parents to get at least to know the parents in the school community. And I think that'll be a good first step in going forward. And you complement that with the fact that we've scheduled school visitation nights. So I think the parents are going to have a pretty high level of familiarity with the schools that their child is going to for next year.
Yeah, it would be good. And I don't know if it's already linked. It's so hard with all the elementary schools and all the Friday parents because they all pop up at once. They're a little overwhelming. Then I think to go back, but making sure that like Deb Murray's putting out that, John Lyman parents, it's going to be going to the Brewster parents for this year, for the end of the year, for upcoming next year, to make sure that they know that those PTO meetings are happening.
A good suggestion.
Yeah.
I know they did it for the visitation nights. I don't know if they've done it for the.
I did see it online. A couple of
Yeah.
the PTOs had written, families, Brewster families welcome.
I haven't noticed, but is it on the RSD13 calendar on the website? PTO meetings?
I believe they are.
Somewhere.
Well, I mean, so they should know when they are. So if everybody wants to go to them, they can go. to
Some of them are not super well attended, so I think they would welcome, but the idea is, and again, we know there are still some different feelings out here about the decision itself, but if people would start meeting up with the people who are gonna be the parent group for next year, that helps them start making plans for next year and, kind of aligns with what we're doing for the learners in May and for the parent drop-in visits and also with the staff.
Because I think when it comes down to it, you make a good point. You can't obviously tell, nonprofits and the PTOs what to do. And I think my only ask about it was that if there wasn't a consensus or a collaboration between now and the end of the year, that we do make sure we're doing some sort of building events besides just a walk-through open house. So there's like a popsicles or something to get that participation in
Yeah.
buildings. And
And that's a really good point too. Again, none of them are here, but my recollection is, and you guys chime in if I'm saying something wrong, is that they feel like there's probably gonna be more energy around that in the late summer. That a lot of people just
want to get out.
Yeah, and also, we're still kind of focused on this school year and kind of getting through it, and we want this all to be positive, and I think also just honoring that we ask parents to come to a lot of things now. We don't know how many would actually do that, but I think it's a great suggestion, and
if you look back, there's multiple meetings where we said, no matter what, we were gonna make sure we had events at the end of this year. And I just want to really honor that and make sure
Yeah.
that we're doing as much as we can.
Sure.
Even if we've got a low attendance, it's
Yeah.
something we did promise to do, and I want to follow through on that. Right.
That's it on reconfiguration, unless anybody has any other questions. Okay, the next one should be even shorter, I hope. You may recall back in July, which I know was a long time ago, we invited a gentleman here from the NEASC organization. I asked him to speak for 10 minutes. He spoke for like an hour. And then you guys peppered him with questions for like another half an hour, I think. Anyway, we were talking at that point about the possibility of doing a district-wide accreditation, which at the time we thought was, something that we should explore and would be good for the district. We still think that, however, that was before the reconfiguration decision was made. It's before we knew we would be where we would, hopefully, with this building project. And so given that, we're kind of revising our thinking to say, let's just let the high school do it. And then 10 years from now, any of us that are still here doing this could maybe consider that at that time, but we didn't want to just do that on our own without informing you of that intention. And there is kind of a timeliness to this, because this is the time of the year when the high school needs to start planning for their process if they're gonna do the traditional high school process. So does anyone have any objections to us moving in that direction?
I think the recommendation coming from the administration is a good one to take on that.
So Deb, you have the resources you need to do that, because I know it's a huge thing.
We do. We are at a huge advantage because Katie did the new process before she left North Branford. And so it is, while it's a big process, it has gotten much smaller. So we feel pretty confident along with the new professional development plan. I think we can use it as part of their goal setting for next year. If teachers take it on, we can't do it obviously, but it can be part of that. I'm looking at Stephanie, the new professional development plan, a goal for the year. And with our move toward self-directed PD, some of that could also go under the self-directed PD. So I think we're in a really good spot to be able
Are
to.
the self-study still part of their process or not? I mean,
We're
it
starting
almost
that.
seems like you're doing their work to then say, oh, this is what's wrong with you now, huh?
Yeah,
Okay.
it is, but
I just never understood that, but
yeah, it's on.
reflection, I
They
guess.
said they do less of a, this is what you're doing wrong, and a more of where do you want to be when we come back? So you decide what you want to work on, where you want to be, and what it's going to look like when they come back. And then when they come back, if you haven't met those things, they ask why and the reasons. There's not much of a scoring, like it used to be a
Correct.
scoring
It
thing.
feels much less like we got you and more how can we support the areas of growth that you and your staff have identified.
It's a goal setting.
Correct.
objective.
Yes.
They got a lot of criticism and they responded to that criticism about their
I would
process.
agree with you. I think so. So yes, to your answer, Jamie.
Oh, thank you, Katie, for doing all that. Thankful for it.
And the only other thing I have is, you may have noticed at your seats tonight, depending on when you arrived, that there were some appreciation gifts. I don't even know what's in the bag, but I know there were some really good looking brownies out there. And I want to thank Meg Maloney for putting all that together. But, you know, on behalf of all of us, for thanking you all, this is Board Member Appreciation Month. You are appreciated. I say this every year, but I mean it. I don't know why any of you would ever do this. You don't get paid a dime. You get a lot of grief. Some people think you're almost like a paid employee, the way they kind of address things with you. But if you didn't do it, we wouldn't have a system and it wouldn't be well represented. So thank you for that. And Meg says, if anybody didn't show up to get their gift, we'll still give them the gift, but you are to come and do their brownies if you wish.
Linda's school.
You did that before I even said it.
No
shame. We'll get the gift and the others. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
No shame, no pride.
There's another one over here. No, John wants that one.
What's that? Brownies? No, I'm already giving mine up.
I put gold leaf on mine, you know.
You're gonna eat it before you
Perfect.
go.
Staff reports 7, Director of Finance, Kim.
This is gonna be a record report. Finishing out the month of February, we were 59% expended in our budget. We've encumbered 99% of our budget, and we have received 65% of our revenue.
That was like 2 seconds.
Right?
Thank you.
Kim, you're awesome.
Seems like Deb's always in the hot spot now. I mean, every meeting, there's something.
Just happy you had me back.
We just make for every meeting, we have some sort of.
Absolutely.
agenda item.
Happy to do so.
Deb's stuff
I
report.
told you,
Uh-huh.
I'm telling you, my husband won't often, so it's fine. It's fine.
7B is probably not gonna be 2 sentences. Deb will hand you over for the National Honor Society update.
Sure.
We did receive a link for this. It's in the drive. Everyone, if you hadn't printed it. it's there.
Yeah, so, you know, learning more than I knew before, and that's great. After, you know, talking a lot with you guys about the National Honor Society, I did reach out to my fellow Shoreline principals and, you know, got some more information. I attached the Constitution of the National Honor Society to you guys. We are controlled by the National Association of Secondary School Principals. They are actually who oversees all the National Honor Societies. This is stuff I'm sharing with you because I didn't know it at all, so I'm figuring some or most of you don't know it either. They are the ones that accreditate our chapter. And I told you guys in the previous meeting that you can only have a chapter if another chapter sponsors you. So I think our original chapter was sponsored by Guilford. And we had the original members in from a Guilford chapter. So I attached this because I wanted you to know, because we all had a lot of opinions about the process and the handbook and how it was done. I wanted you guys to have this so you could look through it, not so I could read it to you because I'm not going to, but there were a few pieces and parts that I really wanted to talk about. You know, the 4 pillars are the pillars that they endorse and they stand. Those are the things we have to do. There has to be a faculty council. Faculty council does more than assess the applications. And I was not surprised, but I did not know this information. They also revise, they are the ones that are in charge of revising, developing procedures for selection, for discipline, for dismissal. So those decisions aren't made by me. I'm very happy about that. But it would be that faculty council. If there was an issue, it was also the faculty council that does the actual looking at the applications. So that did happen this year. We did have the faculty council. I know there was some conversation around, you know, can we change any of how we do the criteria? They have all sorts of models. You guys can go on this website and there's on the National Honor Society website. There's all sorts of models about different ways of assessing character. Character is the hardest. Leadership is listed. Character is one of the hardest. And the chapter can decide whether to increase grade point average. You'll find that in the notes on the last page. Note number 2, Article 9, Section 2, because there was some talk about the GPA, that local chapters can raise the cumulative GPA above the national minimum or increase any of the standards, as long as they're applied fairly and consistently and included in the published selection procedures. So I learned a lot and I wanted you guys to know, and I always appreciate your input, and I think you guys all know that. We have 2 new advisors this year. One was hired the week before school started. So they've had a little bit of, not trouble, they needed a little bit of time to get their feet under them. We know some of the work we need to do moving forward. And I mean, Bob and I have talked, if you're okay with me kind of sharing, there's a couple of things. Seniors, if they don't qualify by their GPA now, next year, we need to do the process, at least for seniors, to reapply earlier, because if they want to put it on the college applications, we've got to get them at, even if we don't have an induction ceremony, we have to look at their applications again, say in October, because they still qualify academically. They should have been and will be, if they haven't already been told, where they were deficient in their application and what they could do to really make that, if it's leadership, how they can work on that. So that's one of the things we, you know, as we were looking at some of the feedback we got. We also got feedback from the kids that applied this year, because this year was a little bit earlier than last year, but I don't think early enough because it was around exam time. And so, you know, that put some of this, mostly some of the juniors sort of on their edge of, you know, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. So some of them said they didn't apply because it was around exam time and time seemed too short. Fair feedback, we get it. Another piece was making sure they know exactly what they need to do or what they're going to be assessed on before they're assessed on it. And so that is another, a third thing that we really want to get out there before the students leave this spring, summer, so that incoming juniors, when we look at their grade point average, we'll know exactly if they qualify by their grade point average, where we're going with that. You know, Doug and I talked a little bit about grade point average earlier today and at another meeting. I haven't met with the advisors. I'm not promising this, but I would think if we change grade point average, that we'd have to start with the incoming freshmen, right? Because they take their classes starting freshman year. To change it on a junior that's on a track, I don't know that that would be appropriate. Again, I haven't talked to the chapter or the advisors. You'll see in here, the principals hardly ever mentioned. I don't really get to make I get to make final decisions if there's some sort of controversy, but the chapter is in charge of all the other things. So with that, on March 27th, we have 27 students being inducted into the National Honor Society. I don't know if you want more information than that. I know I can give you all the math that I did for the last couple of years, but if I just start giving you the percentages and the numbers, I don't know if that's really productive for this conversation, because I didn't prepare something, but I do have some information, but it is March 27th, if you're all available in the evening. I can tell you overall that our acceptance rate for the junior class was 71.4% of the students that applied.
How many seniors did you bring in?
Two got in, I think only 2 applied. The 2 that applied and the 2 got in.
I remember one of the concerns was the gender ratio, which could have been an anomaly, or, I mean, is it consistent with the numbers in the school, like the percentage of kids being inducted?
So it depends which number you're asking for. Again, I have them all, but so we accepted 89% of the boys that applied,
Yeah.
and we accepted 65% of the girls. But numbers wise, it's 8 boys and 17 girls. And then you go back to,
Yeah.
I mean, even to the eligible, there were many more eligible females than males academically,
Yeah.
just that first step. And that's a social science that I can't speak to without diving in deep, but it's an interesting one.
Yeah,
But
I think it's a tier 1 exploration.
yeah.
And then we also talked about, because of student achievement, the board had talked about wanting to have some input.
Right, I'm sorry, I forgot about that. So I think, what I'd like to offer you guys is if people have ideas, if people, Bob has shared his, I brought those up, but I think maybe you guys, I would invite you to come have a conversation with me, and then I can bring those to the advisor. I don't see in here where a board member can be on the chapter to help make decisions. I can take that back to the National Association of Secondary School Principals and see what they say. They would be the ones that would be able to tell us if that's a possibility or not. But I always invite you in. So if somebody brings, or somebody outside, if somebody brings something to you that you think we should highly consider, whether that's lowering the GPA or hiring the GPA, or having them write a character essay instead of getting faculty character points. However we do it, if you guys have some input, I'm happy to listen to it. And I think that might be the best vehicle to do it, is to set up a meeting and come in, or give me a phone call, send me an email, pigeon. Okay.
Have they done this service project this year?
I don't think so. Have they done their service project yet? Are they collecting the hygiene? I think they're doing the hygiene drive right now. They just started. It might be Spanish Honor Society.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things they're supposed to do under there is have a service project. I know in the past 2 years ago, they did a Halloween thing for the kids.
The little kids, I remember that.
But they still have time to do the service project between now and the end of the year, and it's
I'll get on
27
it.
new people.
I'll get on it. Absolutely, and we do. I mean, I think it's been a hard
It
Hard
could be
thing
that they
getting
help
that.
move kids in the grades of this.
Absolutely. Be field day. Doesn't all have to be about community service. I mean, we have a lot of kids that go down to the elementary schools for field day, and it's a mutually good thing.
There's a
for-
big demand.
It's a
High
big
school.
demand for high schoolers. That we need some to put boxes together, but that's different, that's community service.
But I think if they did the field days at the high school, that it was scheduled, and they all had a role to play.
Absolutely. Greg Marone and Alex Edwards are just phenomenal. Jen Holland too, are phenomenal with those high schoolers when they come down. They're so happy to have them. But I will find out, Bob, what they're planning on with their service project.
They may have to be pushed to have a planning project.
They might.
Huh?
You're not wrong. They might. Yeah, Jen.
Please forgive my lack of knowledge on the subject, but is there a financial aspect of the students need money to get into this, like applications? And as I know, we hold fundraisers at our school for NHS, and I'm not sure
So
why
there's-
they need that money.
Yeah,
So
how
it's
about we
not
do
a
the
barrier
service
to a kid
project?
getting into it.
No, there is no fee to apply. I can't speak to what it may cost for some of their leadership opportunities inside and outside of school. Inside of school, obviously, there's no cost to being class president or something like that, taking on a captainship or something like that. But I suppose if they are a leader outside of school and they are working at Park Rec, and they're choosing to be a leader instead of getting paid. So you can't really, there's a fine line between, you're getting paid for this job and you're a leader. So if they are head counselor at Park Rec, they'll often volunteer. So that's financial, but there's no fee to apply or anything like that. I guess maybe it's for the service project. Because if they run something like a Halloween,
Maybe
haunted Halloween thing for the kids, they'd have to raise the money to do it.
maybe they pay for the pins, the road and the.
Yes, the rope, that's what it is. You're
Rope.
right, Bob. That's why we were raising money for that. $60 for the rope or something
I
like
think
that.
we paid for those.
Yeah.
Kim, you think so?
I know we made a lot of pizzas to raise money for that.
So,
Yeah, but I believe one of the things that was talked about was getting the word out to the students to make sure that they knew about this. What do you do, and were there any changes to what's available?
yeah, so I'm sorry, my father and my daughter have both called me during this meeting. That's what I would like to do, is get that handbook out to at least post it and get it out to the junior class early, before this school year ends, before the rising juniors become juniors. I would also, that would have in it the grade point average, which if we can get it posted on the new website wherever we put it, that it's out there. Freshman parents, though the freshmen and sophomores have told me like they're not thinking about National Honor Society, but there may be parents out there that are thinking about what they need for a grade point average in order to qualify. So I want to make sure that information is out there at the end of this year, and that's one of the things, the advisor before she left the district, the advisor that took it over before she left the district at the end of the summer, was planning for some of her fall work, was getting the handbook done, getting it updated. Mr. Petronio told me that when he got here, Mr. Falcone asked him to do it for 1 year, and he ended up doing it for 4 and through COVID. So, his information is kind of, he couldn't go back any further than what he had when I did that preliminary, those numbers for you last year. And so we want to take, with him still here, take everything we have, update it, make sure it's up to date and ready to go for the upcoming. It just hasn't been done. So that's my goal. Therefore, it has to be there.
No, and I think you made a good point talking about, how much involvement the board has with National Honor Society, and really we didn't know, but I think there was just enough concern between, even staff and parents and kids, and we just wanted to make sure that we were in a space where we were listening to them and saying, are we doing the right thing? So I think it'd be nice if, we can have that feedback. I don't know if we could even send that to student achievement just to bounce some ideas back and forth, because even coming into you, some stuff that we might talk about back and forth might be jack our brains and have some recommendations. I think that's probably the best way to go. And then
I think it's great. I didn't know it either. I really had to reach out to my other Shoreline principals. I was like, so I'm being asked these questions, and they're like, and so they were very informative and very helpful. And I didn't even know the NASSP really existed. So
I didn't either. And I'd done a lot of research too. I think we were probably doing parallel research at the time.
So this was very informative. And like I said, the website, if anybody's interested in the process or the forms they have, not that we have to use them, but if somebody is interested, they can certainly look at it. I know there was a question about, anyone who hasn't gotten in trouble, couldn't they just be in on their character because they haven't gotten in trouble? And according to this and the pillars, that's not the case. And now I understand that, and I'll be frank and say that I did not understand that when the question was asked, and I'm glad to have done the research, because I think it's important that I know.
And I think even too, and we don't get ourselves into a spot where we don't have, we have new advisors and they don't have a manual or a guide or policies. And I think that's really all we're asking for at this point. So
I agree.
And I thank you for doing all that work, and, if student achievement could give some recommendations, we could do that. And then, once you guys get some stuff together, come back to us and just, let us know how things are going so we can kind of tie up some loops with that.
Perfect. Would love that.
The induction ceremony is usually pretty nice.
It is.
And
Student run.
it's run by the kids, and they give a little story about every person who's coming in and some of their background.
Yeah.
And it's a nice ceremony. It's different, it's quiet, and it really supports the kids that have worked very hard to get into that position.
And Bob will be there.
Yeah.
I think it's really.
You will be, you have to go.
No, and I think it's encouraging too to see, I think there is a little bit of closing of the gap in those percentages between the boys and the girls. And
Yeah.
so I think, we can find ways to get there, like Linda was saying, even, looking at some tier one beginning and gets more involved. And, are there certain requirements that just were not attracting them to want to apply for it? So if you can keep that in mind too, I think.
Yeah, we let any junior that applied this year have junior privilege starting halfway through the year. So if they apply, they didn't even have to get in. They just had to apply. I hung that carrot in front of them. I do think we got more applications because of that.
That's a nice little incentive.
It was a nice little incentive, and what they found out at the end was, these are the high achieving students, right? So they didn't have study hall first or last, so very few got to take advantage of it, like, they never looked before, they were like, yay, I get to do it too, and then there was like
And
three of
I
them.
was talking to other districts, and I was talking outside of, regular schools and some private schools, and what they had said too is they had a lot of juniors and seniors that just really weren't even sure, am I going to college? And is it something I need? Am I going to a community college for 2 years to be able to work up to go on to the next level? So I think that there's a big division in where kids really are choosing to be in that junior and senior year. So I think that's
I
probably.
think the biggest
also-
question was the GPA in itself, was it not? What the.
Yeah, and whether it was in looking at, I don't know, you didn't speak on that at all. It's a little difficult to.
So I have the chart, and it was at student achievement, and it's okay, I meant to print it out and I forgot. But we, in the shoreline, I think we were the second or third lowest required GPA in obviously the shoreline. And we even, Katie and I even went through and asked them all weighted, not weighted, and some people had a different formula. But we are, I think we're the third lowest in the shoreline in our requirement for GPA. I'm not, because I can't, I don't know if the chapter will, I'm not suggesting right now that we raise it, but if we think about raising it again, I want the freshmen to know. Because you can't raise it on a junior and,
Well, I think that was one of the biggest things, because they were debating whether or not, at least the complaints that I got.
correct, that it should be, it says 3.0, and why are we at the 3.66?
Correct.
And that has to do with the weighted grades in comparison.
I
right?
totally understand that. But
Yeah,
that-
but I
No,
think
But
that that's the
that-
hard part.
That
when you-
reasoning or the explanation is what was needed in
Absolutely.
order for us to make sure that everyone knows what that standard is.
Absolutely.
And
But that is
the
hard.
character assessment too is, very subjective.
We also have 27 kids out of 80 who have made it, which is
Right.
a really high percentage of.
And I think when you poll
Yeah.
teachers as a whole, they kind of figure out what the character of the student is anyway, for the most part. I mean, yeah, it's subjective, I get that, but
I think there needs to be a balance. I think a kid should, I believe, again, just mine, I believe the kid should have to attest to his own character. I mean, I think about other jobs and places, like I do think there needs to be a little onus on the student to say, hey, maybe I didn't act so great here, but I learned and I grew, and that could also help in a character assessment when they're reading applications. But I don't know if that's the way the chapter will go either. I just think it might be a good idea.
We had a great PD today at Prince Tech, and it was about restorative practices that we hear so much about. But the very beginning was all about just so often we can label kids and they just get a target on their back from day one, and it doesn't stop, and it only builds and builds and builds. But we also have to realize some kids can also suddenly change and turn over a new leaf. So hopefully that.
Agree.
Any other questions? Definitely appreciate it. Second page, on new business, update and possible vote on increasing educator diversity plan. Hand that to Kevin.
Okay, thank you, Lindsay. I did want to take a few minutes to discuss our increasing educator diversity plan. Before I start, Public Act 23-167 requires each local and regional board of education in Connecticut to submit an increasing educator diversity plan to the State Department of Education for review and approval. So this has to go through an approval process. As part of the process, you as the board needs to approve it before I send it to the state. So I just wanted to give you that. This is the mandate from the state. As you know, we're not a terribly diverse district. So that's one of the challenges that we have to overcome. And so we've kind of targeted some pretty key strategies to address that. You can see on our cover page, our vision statement and our theory of action. The theory of action serves to communicate what we intend to do, what changes will transpire as a result, and to what end. So our theory of action, if Regional School District 13 increases its awareness of the importance of a diverse staff of excellent educators supporting the success of its learners, then the district will develop the capacity to increase the diversity of our teaching staff, and learners will succeed and engage in a globally connected world. You can take a look at our team membership. It was composed primarily of individuals who are administrators, principals, Liza Siegel, Cheryl Gonzalez, Rebecca Succi, who's an English teacher at Coggins High School, Jeff Landry, who's a special ed teacher at Memorial School, Steve Fitzgerald, who's the coordinator of student affairs at Strong, and Deb Murray, the principal of Brewster School. The way this plan is structured, and before I explain, the state set up the template of the plan and basically identified the structure of the plan. So districts completing their plan really had to go by the structure that the state identified as what they wanted. So it's divided into three major parts. There is a recruitment section, a hiring and selection section, and a retention portion of our plan. As I mentioned, the plan structure is pretty specific. There's 7 major components. There's a broad-based goal. Basically, there's another section that identifies who manages the goal. There's another component relating to strategies. What is the strategy? Who manages the strategy? And by when? So there's definitely a timeline. Other parts of our plan that the state asked for were indicators of progress. What do we expect to see as we move towards completing our different strategies? What resources are required? What risks and mitigation can take place? What can go wrong? What we do to address these possible risks? And also another very important part is communication and engagement efforts, because I think a lot of this plan is about engaging people and engaging folks. So for the first portion, we identified 2 major goals. The first goal was to increase recruitment efforts to attract and hire high-quality, diverse candidates to our district. And the second was to create opportunities to engage in partnerships with colleges and universities to include diverse teaching candidates to apply to our district. From this particular part, we identified 7 different strategies, and we felt that these strategies were achievable, attainable, and I'll list those strategies for our recruitment portion of the plan. So the first one we really tried to do was to reach out to people applying to our district, individuals from diverse backgrounds, individuals of color, and revise our human resources mission statement to reflect the goal of welcoming candidates from diverse backgrounds. And we're hoping that this mission statement appears on application materials, interview questions, and we can really infuse this mission statement into all aspects of our hiring materials, which we think is very, very important. So it welcomes individuals who are from underprivileged backgrounds or diverse backgrounds. So I think that's the first step. The other thing we're hoping to do is to pilot the use of alternative recruitment posting options. I did list Indeed and also Diversity in Ed, which is a posting site that is open and is viewed by people from diverse backgrounds, many individuals from historically Black colleges, things of that nature. So hopefully we can get our positions, our openings known to those folks and have them apply to the district. The third major piece was to partner with local universities, Central Connecticut and Southern Connecticut, fairly local, to provide field experiences and student teaching experience opportunities for future educators. And there is some research that indicates that individuals who attend a local high school take a teaching job within 20 miles of where they graduated from high school. So a pretty high percentage in that regard. So if we can reach out to establish relationships with these local universities, develop some connections, I think that'll be a really, really good opportunity. And, you know, the field experiences are just as they described. They're short, 6 to 8 weeks. An individual comes in, works with a particular class or group of classes for short-term lessons, but builds those relationships. I think that's a really key part in those connections. if a student graduates, completes their certification requirements, and applies for a position in our district, they're much more likely to be hired because of those relationships that have been established. So I think that that's really, really important. The other strategy, number 4, is one I'm really excited about, because due to the fact that we're not a real diverse district, I think we need to take a regional approach if we want to make a concerted effort to increase the diversity of our teaching population. So I did reach out to the Connecticut State Department of Education and also Pat Charles, who's head of the Middlesex Consortium. For those of you who don't know what the consortium is, it's a group of schools centered in Upper Middlesex County. It includes Middletown, East Hampton, Portland, East Haddam, Cromwell, and us. And I really want to take a regional approach and see if we can really establish an Educators Rising program. And what that is, it's a teacher preparation program. And we don't have a lot of teachers applying for districts. And I think the research and just all the information out there is that pool of teaching applicants overall is diminishing. So if we can increase and if we can nurture individuals in our high school or local high schools that have an interest in teaching and encourage them through visits to local teacher preparation universities, mentoring and things of that nature, I think it'll be a really exciting possibility. And my vision for that is to have high school students from local school districts spend time in our district and have teaching experiences there, and us kind of extending ourselves to those surrounding school districts to share experiences, and again, taking a regional approach. Another aspect of this is that there's many grants available through the State Department of Education, which I hope to apply for. They will provide up to $10,000 to explore some additional opportunities for our students and students from a regional approach. And lastly, to collaborate with regional education service centers to obtain strategies and resources that promote the recruitment of diverse candidates. I think clearly they're the experts in the field. I think we need to rely on them to a certain degree to provide us with some strategies, provide us with resources to help us get better to apply and to engage with diverse candidates for our teaching positions. The second part is the hiring and selection part. We have one goal there, and that's to attract and hire highly qualified, diverse candidates to Regional School District 13. Our first strategy is to provide implicit bias training to all staff involved in hiring and selection. And we have a specific consultant to do that. The name of that agency is Partners for Educational Leadership. Last year, administrators, individuals who hire staff were provided training by Carrie Lord. We hope to have Carrie back to build on that and maybe have her back multiple times to do that for implicit bias training for our hiring staff. We also want to establish a district recruiting and selection team, basically to take a look at key attributes of attracting diverse candidates and infusing those strategies throughout our schools in the district. And I think by taking a district approach, we can have that core group of people go out and provide training of trainers to staff who are hiring individuals in each of our district schools, and I think really gain some momentum in this area.
And
The
if you don't
third
mind-
strategy.
You mind if I interrupt
Sure.
that, and if I get back and I'll forget at that point. Was there any talk or how maybe other districts, I know Pat Charles at the time had really done a lot of work around this, and she had some successes and she had some non-successes in that. She was in Middletown before we had moved here, and she's a great resource. So I take her opinion really highly. I wonder if we're looking at tracks and higher quality diverse candidates to RSD13. It lists, building administrators, directors of services. I know we have hiring committees in the district. We bring in coaches, parents. Is that something that we could offer a mini, bias training on that? Is that something
We're required to.
Right.
It's
That's what I was
state mandated.
wondering.
Anybody who sits on an interview committee has to go through the anti-bias training.
Okay.
It has to go through a anti-bias training. Doesn't have to be any specific one, but.
So it could be different than an in-person. It could be a virtual option for that as well.
We're not required to do implicit bias training yearly.
We are through the increasing diversity.
Well, only the interview, people who sit on an interview committee. That's the only state mandate. So like some districts are doing it where it's part of, like, as you go from bloodborne pathogen training to the antibiotic training, so that everybody's getting it, because then you don't have to worry about who's been trained when you pull for an interview. Every single teacher's been through it, so you can bring them onto the committee. Otherwise, somebody should be looking at who's on your interview committee. Have they been through the bias training? They haven't been, they can't sit on the interview committee. So if you blanket train everybody, anybody can sit on the interview committee. But I believe it's only for employees. So like, I don't think parents who sit on committees have to go through it. But I'm not sure about that. I don't know.
I believe you're correct. The next strategy is somewhat of a long-term strategy, and that's to develop and implement just a 2-year hiring recruitment plan that just takes a look at all of our processes, our screening processes, our application protocols, interview questions, essay questions, and take a look and revise these to better, I guess, match diverse candidates and to allow them to go through the process. The final component is retention. We have one goal for that. That's to develop initiatives that promote the retention of underrepresented individuals by creating a supportive culture so diverse candidates feel welcomed, engaged, and supported in Regional School District 13. Our first strategy is to provide additional support and guidance to new staff. New staff are mandated to take a team program mentorship training, but I think we look to provide even more support in terms of having a mentor in the building who can share day-to-day experiences, provide insight in the culture, and generally support that individual. And ideally, we'd like to have diverse educators already in the district to support new staff from diverse backgrounds. Again, to take a regional approach, we want to partner with surrounding districts, also with some limited staff diversity, and see if we can form a regional group. So new staff from different districts who are from diverse backgrounds have that support, and they can share thoughts, ask questions, things of that nature with other individuals who are new staff. We also want to create a digital handbook for new staff. This is something that I think has been a need for a couple of years that new staff can access, provide resources, information regarding the district, regarding the specific buildings that they're in. And also, Stephanie has done a lot of work with our PDEC committee. Again, you'll be hearing about our new teacher evaluation plan, and we want to work in collaboration with the PDEC committee and the Equity and Diversity Professional Learning Group we have to provide opportunities for professional learning in regards to culturally responsive teaching. So that in a nutshell is our plan. Just one other aspect, an important component of this is monitoring. And our team will meet 4 times a year to monitor progress on the goals and to adjust strategies as needed, because, these are dynamic and it all depends on, where we are in certain parts of these different strategies to monitor and adjust those.
So there's not a recruitment team per se in place right now.
There is not, John. That's a goal we're looking for.
So like, we're not attending job fairs or doing any, the plan is to get a recruitment team that it has had implicit bias training that's going to go out and solicit.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. And
We
can
do
work
this as well, but the only problem with the regionalization part of it is you're going to lose a good candidate to someone else.
And they're gonna go to Middletown.
And they're going to go somewhere where the benefits are better or where they feel they're going to fit better.
And I need to be clear on something too.
It's a
We're
great
not-
idea though.
And this is not a criticism, it's because of our size. We're not really resourced to do an active recruitment endeavor. And when we talked to Pat, she mentioned that when she was in Middletown, they sent teams of people to all these colleges.
That was my next question.
And they got
Right.
0 hires out of
Right.
all that.
I mean,
And they
obviously-
had to admit that. So again, we're not saying we're not committed to this.
Yep.
But I think we have to be realistic about.
It is, for us at least, an overtime expense
Yes.
in order for us to send people out and do that. And again, contractually, things here and however that is set up, but the recruitment teams that we send out go to the testing process, where if there is a testing process, right? But I don't think there is per se. You graduate from college and you get a job. But the job fairs have worked very well. But again, when you do it collaboratively with someone else, that pool diminishes greatly depending upon what we offer as a district. There's a comparison as far as money, benefits, and whatever the case is. So if you do that collaboratively with our district, we may or may not really fulfill what we're looking to do. But it's a great idea. I think that was it's a great plan. I think you presented it very well, but it's a difficult process, believe me. It took us 4 years to get a 17% increase. But that was having discussions with the NAACP, having it with the National Actions Network. I mean, reaching out to a lot of those diverse communities in order for them to say, hey, listen, we're actively looking for people to come here. Because we're a predominantly white farm town, and, you know, people don't want to stick out, you know, but in order to make it welcoming, we need to be out there. And it is a cost.
Too, CABE had, this is one of their big legislative priorities this year, so I've had a lot of board of directors meetings where we've really gone through it and talked about it. I know CAPS has done it as well. And so I think part of it has to be creative, because we are in, you know, a state of, you know, it doesn't look like teacher shortages are going away right now, and so the pool is less to begin with. But even if, I don't know how much of the plan, I tried to figure it out maybe when I can go through it. But when we talk about if we can't get certain teachers in, you know, what are we doing to maybe increase our substitute teachers from diverse backgrounds or paras?
Yeah, I think you're right on point with that, Lindsay. I think one real aspect where we've seen some growth in terms of diversity is our non-certified staff, our teaching assistants, our ABA therapists. And I think that's a start. That opens a door for us. And, you know, I'd like to think we can build capacity with those individuals. And who knows, down the road a little bit, have those individuals become certified. And who knows if the state maybe changes some of their requirements as far as certification, because I think that is a good inroads and it's realistic. I think that, I hope
That's a big part.
It is.
That is. And they are, there's a new.
That's a big part.
There's a committee that just submitted their recommendations to the state legislature to change some of the certification requirements. And we'll see what the legislature says. Some of them are for Connecticut, pretty radical.
Even at public hearing, it seemed like they were willing to really bend to a lot of the asks on that. So I think that there's some, for the first time, seeing some pull on that from the legislature saying, okay, we're gonna give up this, we're gonna allow that to happen.
Now, we've posted some jobs just recently that I
We
know,
have,
right?
yes.
So the applicant pool that's coming in for that. Diverse at all? No.
Well, we have no applicants for some position.
Okay, that's the concern, obviously. in itself.
Yeah.
But let me ask you this, if once we do get applicants, are they standardized questions that we make up? Or are they standardized questions that are generic throughout the industry of teaching?
Yeah.
Or are those questions geared towards what we're looking for here, or do they need to be changed or looked at in order for us to make sure that they're not too difficult or eliminating people because we don't like the answer?
We do a writing prompt, I presume. That's
We have
kind of
we have a couple of essays in our application process. We have a standardized essay, and Deb, jump in. But certainly, once we have applicants, then we design questions and interview steps designed for those positions that are open.
So is that a standardized process that we need to follow? First question.
No.
Okay, so the second question is, because we've eliminated some of those things, like a spelling test.
Right.
Different for you, but whatever. Are there parts of that process that we currently have in place that may be eliminating people that shouldn't be eliminated?
Yes.
Quite possibly.
I think that's what the plan is going to
All right,
address.
so the next question is who's going to review that and how does that get approved and who's going to approve that?
Yeah, so I think that our team that, you know, we've identified our district recruitment and selection team will vet those questions and take a look at our recruiting process and hopefully adapt that to make it a better match for all candidates who are applying to our district.
But to answer your question, in my experience, most interview protocols, like for teachers, are almost identical. The questions might be phrased slightly differently, but there's always one about classroom management, and there's one about curriculum, there's one about planning, there's one about parent
I
involvement.
disagree.
And in my experience, I'm not saying it's a good thing.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, and a lot of your certification programs actually train the graduates on how to prep for these kind of standard interviews. So it's a bold step we're taking if we're willing to deviate from that Because I think
There's
otherwise
the-
you're just gonna keep getting
Right.
what you
I
get.
I think the plan
Yeah.
and the way it was presented is fantastic. I am just incorporating some of the difficulties that, at least on my end of things, and how it is with just the hiring process as a whole. And because it's a big goal of ours as well too, not only to diversify, but to make 30 by 30 in my field, to make 30 females by the time 2030 comes around, and making the field of what I do attractive to a female that, you know, wants to get into law enforcement. But here, it's different, I get it, but we have to be accommodating to everyone and making it a standardized practice that is fair. And, you know, it's difficult, but if there's part of those processes that we can get rid of that are not necessarily important, that may eliminate some people, I think those things need to be looked at.
I think part of that process though, and this is the interesting thing hearing from just a lot of students that had come to CAVE and really talked about it was, you know, I just touched on it with the paras and the substitute teachers that some of these kids were saying, I just want to be able to connect with somebody in my school that is like me. And so that's huge. So if we can, on that angle, do that. Another thing, a few candidates of positions that chose not to come to certain districts had said that they felt no matter what, they didn't know as much about what was going on in the schools, but what was publicly available on websites, social media, you know, was it welcoming policies? They looked at Board of Education policies, and this is why, like, I ask, and I understand the board has to approve it to go forward, but if there, you know, if there is something, or if there's an agency or
Well, the
that
advertising
can go
portion
through our
of it.
policies and really say, like, you know, what would be a detractant to a candidate? You know, are we just looking at hiring policies, or are they really going through our district and saying, I don't know, just based on what's out there publicly?
So we've also taken ads out in diverse areas, like in the Hartfords, the New Havens, the Bridgeports, you know, even American for that matter, right? You can't just advertise that in the Durham Times, you know, or put it on our website. It has to be somewhere where, you know, someone of a diverse background is gonna be able to get their eyes on it. A billboard on 91, I mean, that costs money, I get that. But it's certainly better, in my opinion, than going out with a recruit team sometimes, because you're gonna get more people in that localized, or even if you're posting it in city halls in some of these places, right? They'll allow you to do that. But again, you've got to think outside the box and everything a little bit, get a little creative, and listen, it is a challenge, and I get it. And I think we're all trying to do that because, you know, obviously everyone needs an opportunity, everyone should get a chance, so.
Now, the state
It's
takes this plan, and then they'll either tell you they want you to revise something, it would come back. Is there a time where it has to be approved by? I forget what the date in the legislation was.
So, basically, we need to submit the plan shortly.
Thursday.
By
Yeah.
Friday. I think, is it Friday?
I thought it was the 15th.
So, and then, the state will receive it, the state will review it and provide feedback to us. They may say, you've got a good plan, we accept your plan. They may come back and say, you know, there are some changes that we feel need to be made. We want you to review the plan and make some changes. And if at that point, if that's where we are, we have to submit the revised plan by May 15th.
It seems to me that there's, the only role for the board right now is to approve the plan. But it seems like if we're gonna approve the plan, we need to make some kind of commitment to it, which from us is probably financial. And, you know, from a board point of view, what are we gonna do to support this? Besides saying, good job, Kevin, and.
Well, there's not a number
One of the things,
associated to the
one of the
proposal
things
that you
that we
get.
might wanna look at is,
So.
how do we do the advertising? Do we have enough money to pay for that?
Is there?
You know, that.
Yeah, and
if
I think
there's
there's another
student
point.
te-
Yeah.
You know, I think the idea of getting student teachers into the school, we may have to pay for their transportation, which, you know, if the student teacher is teaching out of Hartford, but, you know, maybe they need a ride to get here, you know, and back. And so there's some value that we can put on some of these steps to make sure they happen other than just hope.
Do you have
Well,
any idea that what districts are doing with that? Is there something that they're thinking ahead on that, or is it?
You know, I'm
putting.
really enthused about, the State Department grant opportunity, so that can give us about $10,000 through that Educators Rising. And I'm gonna hang my hat on a regional approach. I don't know how successful I'll be, John, but I have spoken to Pat Charles several times and also the state,
No,
so.
it's great to collaborate. It just all depends on what we offer in
Exactly.
comparison to the
I get that.
6 others or
Yeah.
5 others that we're competing with.
The other piece I think it's important to identify, and this is not a bad situation to be in.
No,
We don't hire that many people. People come here and they want to stay, and that contributes to our lack of diversity. But trust me, you don't want to be in a place that's in the opposite, where they've had unfilled vacancies. So for us to go to recruiting fairs, we got to have a job open to even recruit somebody. And again, I've worked in districts where
Right, I mean, you can go, I mean, every year there's the Increasing Educator Diversity Job Fair, and people go and collect resumes and meet people and sell your district, so that when there is an opening, you say, oh, let me go to my files, oh, I remember this dude, and then call them, so.
Right, I don't disagree with
Yeah.
you in concept, I'm just saying the numbers in our situation say we can do that, but like, that could be years before we have an opening and we don't know where I think the low hanging fruit is the student teaching stuff, and I'd love to see a way for the non-licensed staff that we have from diverse backgrounds to be encouraged to go into teaching or some other licensed field. I think that's probably our best chance.
Teacher residency program.
They already, now there's some cost.
A mentoring,
Yeah.
a mentoring program, like a field training.
Energy.
Exactly, like we have.
Because they're already here and they already like it, they're already choosing to be in an area that's not, so I think, and that's in the plan too, I'm just.
To the doctor's point, though, it is nice to have that file of candidates.
Oh, yeah.
Binder of women.
But I'll let you have that one. It's, here, have some of my coffee. No, but it's definitely important to do that. And to her point, it's like, if you're not out there to do these things, but hopefully you get that $10,000, because if that is the case, then that allows you to do the advertising and things that you want to do. But as far as I'm concerned, the plan that you presented tonight is a great start, and I'd be in favor of you going forward with your plan.
So turnover is not a problem in this district, however, just probably put the focus on retirements and then say, okay, look what we have happening in 3 years, and we can kind of pre-plan for that sort of scenario. I go through about 9 new phone lists a year just to show the turnover levels, like, oh, new phone list, new phone list, new phone list, new phone list. I don't know what number to get a hold of anybody.
And I think recruitment's important. I just wonder how much we could weigh that with organic changes. You know, what are we organically doing that's keeping us from that? It might not be a lot.
But you still have to show the effort.
Well, no, but we need to figure out what we're doing, you know, are we doing anything wrong organically? Are we doing anything wrong with our public information, our website, you know?
No, I don't think we're doing anything wrong. I'm just saying that
Or could we,
the plan.
there's always an
is
improvement on.
Looking to move forward on is something that we need to really make it a little bit more robust, but I mean, the plan is to get diverse people here, and making that effort to do that is extremely important.
I can't help but wonder sometimes our curriculum might sort of be prohibitive to wanting candidates to come from diverse backgrounds. Like, no, I don't teach that. No, I don't do that. But I would like to do this if you offered it. You know, I do wonder if that is a restricting factor for having diversity on our staff.
I don't know. I think I'd like to teach here as opposed to working in a,
Oh, all kids are.
I won't even say it where I work.
They're all difficult.
I get that, but I mean, there's something to be said for, you know, working in a great environment overall, where the kids and the students want to learn and want to do.
That's subjective though. What a great environment to a teacher is totally different from.
I get it. I
Yeah,
get it.
so here are a few thoughts. One is, by all means, we can roll the dice. I don't know who they have. They didn't give a rubric. They didn't give any real guidance on what would make or break so who knows? And I don't know who's going to be looking at them.
Yeah.
I do know that ideally they want to see data. They want to see, we are going to increase our educator diversity by, this is what it is now. This is how it's reflective or not reflective of our student population. And here's our commitment. Here's where we're trying to get to. They are probably, they're going to want to see some more specificity. And I, upon second read, is probably specific enough. But thinking about, so we're going to do this training, they're going to kind of want to see for whom, how often, at what intensity level. I did notice that in the communication column, there isn't anything to the community. And I just think that that's really kind of essential. I get comments all the time about the why are we doing this? And the answer is not because the state is making us, it's because it's the right thing to do. It's research-based, it's all of those things. And so I think that that's an important addition. I think that when the strategies for retention are really focusing on new teachers, when in reality it's not, the issue with retention isn't with the teachers coming in, right? If John Smith comes in, our efforts don't need to be placed on John Smith to keep him. The efforts need to be placed on the environment into which we have put John Smith to be welcoming and that John Smith is valued. And so I think that's really important, that in talking about anti-bias training, culturally relevant pedagogy, all of those pieces need to be system-wide rather than on just the hiring practice. That's how we retain people, right? Is because they come here. When you're talking about regionalizing, the reason why they're not, it has nothing to do with money. Research shows, I love saying that, but like, it's not the money or the benefits that keep someone in a district. It's whether they feel as though they
Yeah,
belong,
and I think
whether they feel valued.
Linda, I think it's a culture.
Yeah.
I think the
Right.
culture is a really big part of that.
And so I think that is where where our work really lies. So that if we, manage to attract some candidates of color, that they realize that they're a part of our community, a part of our family, and they choose to stay. One other kind of piece of low hanging fruit is just adding on. So there have been studies that show that men, and specifically white men, are more likely to look at, say there's 10 qualifications for a job, and they only meet 8 of them, they'll apply. But women and people of color won't. And so a lot of people are adding it's a, equal opportunity. Everyone is used to seeing those, but it says, and I can find it if anyone's interested, just that, research shows that women and people of color are less likely to apply for a job if they don't meet every single one of we are looking for the best candidate for our position. Please, if you're only missing one, apply anyway. And I just think that even if, what that does is it signals, right, everything speaks. It signals that this is important to us. So even if the one qualification being certified, that's a deal breaker, right? But we're at least signaling that it's something that's important to us.
Sure.
I think those are my big highlights.
I just think the
But a lot
hoops that a new teacher needs to go through with the State Department of Education and the people that are still working from their homes in pajamas. It's just, and you get different answers from different people. The state really needs to rethink that process, as we talked about. I don't know what's going on, but you're pretty confident, Linda, that it's going to get better and simplified and streamlined, not necessarily to lower the bar, but
right. No, it's going to get rid of some of the credential
people are not
bias
going to do
that,
this if it's
right.
going to be too hard.
Yeah.
I can't deal with all this.
Well,
paperwork.
and so many things so many of the hoops don't do anything for student achievement. Like, they don't change. Look, I know plenty of people with doctorates who are morons and can't teach, right? And so to say you have to have this degree by year 5, it doesn't guarantee anything in front of the kids.
Right.
And so that's what they want to do, is they want to start removing some of those pieces so that we get people in front of kids who should be in front of
Yeah,
them.
and conversely, Linda, that individual who doesn't have that degree, who connects with kids and could do a fantastic
Right.
job as a teacher as
Right.
well.
That's
To
it.
to Linda's point too, that, like I said, that 30 by 30, maybe putting out there, we want to, hire 10 by, whatever that is. It's going to be difficult. To Doug's point though, too, we don't have our retention is not a problem here. People want to be here and maybe, they want to be here, right? And they want to stay here their whole career because it's a great place to work, right? And those opportunities aren't as, abundant, I guess, but we
I
definitely
think,
need to.
Linda, do you feel like the suggestions you have could be incorporated when it comes back before it gets like formally done?
So my fear, the numbers, I think that, like I said, it may come back and then we just add them in. But those are kind of a shot in the dark anyway.
Yeah.
I feel pretty strongly that, and you got 2 days. Come on. But I feel pretty strongly that adding in some kind of communication
Okay.
to the community, and again, y'all talk too, but like, I feel like that's important to put in there. Like, I wouldn't want, because there's not enough capacity at the state to really look at it with a fine tooth comb. I wouldn't want this to pass as is if it didn't have something about communication to the community. I would also want it to have something talking about that support for retention isn't just focused on the new teachers, but it's focused on the environment also. That's a heavier lift in 2 days.
And do you think we
Well,
need
plus,
to add
you're approving something tonight, so we
Well, that
need,
was
we
my,
need
like,
the
question.
actual
So I
language.
do have a motion, like, we could modify the motion to say, approve the increasing education diversity plan, with changes to community.
Right.
And so that gives Kevin time to be able to add that portion, like, I think the other part's a harder sell, and maybe that's when he comes back and like, he could put that in. I just want to give him that space to be able to have that with adding that, but I do agree, I think the community portion is important, so.
Do you think that they're gonna look specifically at numbers? I mean.
I know that if you,
Data-driven.
well, yeah, and that's the
Yeah.
problem, but I know they want it. And I know that if those people who are leading it are the ones who are reading it, but they gotta read 170 of them.
Yeah.
And there's like 3 people. And they haven't asked us yet to read them. So I don't know. I know ideally that it wouldn't go through without numbers.
Yeah.
However, I don't know who's gonna
And
read.
Kevin, the format is their format that's been specified, and
Correct.
also
Yeah.
you've talked to a lot of other districts, and you guys have actually sat down and compared plans. And
We have.
again, that doesn't mean ours is great, but ours is gonna look a lot like a lot of the other ones that go in, so at least we feel like and a lot of those districts are districts that look like us, that are having the same struggles we are with coming up with all these things.
If memory serves me correct, the state does have requirements when they're looking at higher educators. They have an equity coordinator on the interview panel, and it's not considered a valid interview unless there's a certain number of candidates, but also a certain number of candidates that are reflective of the student population of the school that they're interviewing for. I mean, that's pretty stringent, and that's also a delay in the hiring process as well, but you don't foresee anything like that coming down the pike for
I don't,
for
Jamie.
individual districts.
No, I don't. Well, you can't get into an interview with the state without that right now, so.
We can have, if there's any last minute discussion on it, but you want to make that motion, so I would make a motion to approve the increasing educator diversity plan with modifications to the community outreach, and also to authorize the superintendent or equivalent school administrator to execute any plan revisions that may be required. So a second.
Wait, do I get to ask a question about
Yeah.
that? Does that mean that if it comes back with suggestions, we're authorizing them to make those revisions and we don't see it again?
I think we would see it again before it went back out.
You
right?
could see it again. What Kevin is suggesting is that there might be a deadline on that doesn't conform. It really comes to how involved do you guys want to be with those changes? If they're minor changes, I think Kevin's suggestion, which I think is a good one, is you'd authorize us just to make them and tell you that we made them.
Yeah.
But if you want to approve it, we'll tell the state we can't do this until our board reproves it. So it's whatever you guys are comfortable with. We were just trying to balance your involvement with the practical.
Right.
And we don't know the process is the problem.
Right,
We
and
don't know
I
if
think
they're
the
gonna say,
understanding is that, we're making a commitment between the administration and the
Yes.
board to let us know what comes of all this, and at the end of it, maybe it's not an approval, but it's still.
it could be 6
consensus.
months from now that we hear anything.
True story.
I'm not.
Yeah.
Or it
But
could
even
be,
if,
or it
even
could
if
be
it came
next
down
week. Yeah.
to sending, someone during the summer, if Linda and I wanted to look it over and.
Oh, yeah.
I just think that that's important when it comes back, so. Do I have a second? on that one? Let's see. Any last discussion, even though we discussed a lot before?
Did you read it again?
The whole thing, line by line, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, on discussion on it, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstained?
Nice job.
Motion passes. Kevin, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And so new business, we've got 3 of these in a row. And we have links on these if you've had a chance to take a look at them. I'll hand it back to Deb and Katie, because I feel like they run the board of ed.
It's all good. The Anaheim trip is the DECA trip. We have a couple leadership spots, and Dia Patel, who is a state champion, she will be presenting. She gets to present out there. I think the last 2 years I've been here, we've been really lucky. It hasn't been across the country. Last year, I think it was in Boston, so we weren't asking for this. But Ryan Doniger is successfully taking these students on these DECA trips for years and does a great job, and it's a great opportunity. So you'll see that one in there. Do you want to do them separate, Lindsay, or?
Yeah, I'll do this first one. So, I'll make a motion to approve the Cogtown Regional High School field trip request for Anaheim. We have a second, then we can have discussion on it. Second by Bob. Okay, discussion. So was there anything, that we went through and anyone didn't understand? I know a lot of us, we usually end up talking about, who's paying for it? Do we have a chance for the kids to be able to fundraise for it?
Yeah, DECA has been fundraising for it. I know, if there were any concerns about cost, Ryan would be in my office figuring out a way.
Yeah.
I've not heard that from him yet. They were to tell him if they were able to attend, today is Wednesday, I think they had to tell him by Monday. I don't have the specifics of what they were told, of who said they were going or not, but he's pretty confident that the kids that were invited were gonna take their spots. And that whether they were paying or using the
Like
fund.
4 kids, right? It's like 4 students.
If they all said yes. It was the winners and then the leadership spots that they get every year.
So it's not 8, it's like 4?
Yeah.
Yeah.
At that point, he didn't know, because the competition hadn't happened yet.
That's right. Okay.
So he didn't know how many would win.
Any other questions or discussion on this one? All right, close discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? All right, motion passes. C, approve the Cogtown Regional High School field trip request for Paris and Madrid.
Yeah, so as you know, the trip to Guatemala
hold
did
on.
not.
Sorry.
So
Do I have
we have to do that
motion for
first.
that
I
one?
forgot that.
Lucy, second.
Second.
Second by Bob.
Sorry.
Discussion, go ahead. Sorry, by Bob.
So the Guatemala trip, didn't really have as much interest as we had anticipated, for this coming year. So, Justine Plord and Kate Germain got together. They would really like to reinstitute, an international trip. And they decided that it would be a, Paris and Madrid trip, over spring break next year. So not this spring break, but a year from now. They wanted to get it on the agenda to, again, to everyone's point, see what they needed to do for fundraising and how many children wanted to go. And I know, and Katie can probably speak to this more, having been at a high school longer, that these trips were before COVID hugely popular for students. Usually only offered once or twice in the kids' high school career. And so a lot of students really wanted to go. They wanted to, obviously do France and Spain so that they could do both languages that we offer here. I don't know if you have anything else.
Yeah, no, I just think they're trying to appeal to as many learners as possible for this trip. So it's both our French and our Spanish departments, of all grade levels. Students who are interested can absolutely participate if they elect to. But it seems like a really awesome trip. It'll have a lot of culture. I mean, obviously getting to see those 2 countries is just such an amazing opportunity to get to do, not only with your educators, but with your friends in high school as well.
And doing it on spring break
Yeah, they may
Might-
make one day.
might make it less attractive to some, but in terms of us feeling good about, they get that experience and they're not missing a week or
Correct.
10 days of school.
And as a parent who tried to send her 2 daughters each to one of these, spring break was the time I wanted to send them because I didn't want them to miss school either. So as a parent, I didn't mind that, especially a year or more ahead of time.
Yeah, I think that's important too. I wondered if the cost was a little bit up just because that is that time of year.
Oh, that's the guess.
Spring break. No, I know. But if it does give them a year, to do the fundraising.
It'll probably be
it's
even more.
It's important.
Kevin, this could be an opportunity to recruit some people from abroad. There you go.
That means Katie and I.
Think out of the box.
Jamie, some
Oh, you're part of the recruitment.
linguistic diversity.
No.
I like it.
Okay.
Well played.
No other
Well,
discussion or
just
questions?
what plans are, again, it is like that, cost is gonna be prohibitive for a lot of kids. So what is the plan to defray the cost?
So it would be fundraising. They'll, once they get kids to commit and know the time frame for paying, they will, do different activities. I don't know if you have some examples of what they've done in the past in North Branford. I've not been involved in a trip like this, but I know that they will absolutely, I know she took my daughter, was going to take my daughter on a small trip. There's all sorts of pie fundraisers.
We
And
would
this,
do a fundraiser every month for students who wanted to in alignment with the staggered payments that were due. Absolutely made it possible, and some students even surpassed the amount of the trip, and that would just go to help other students who needed financial need. So I definitely feel that both Kate Dravon and Justine Ford will do their best to ensure we have multiple opportunities for students to fundraise as needed.
And again, it might be different for different situations, but if you do it this far out, there could be an incentive to get employed over the summer where they might not be. If that's something the family wants to require, again, we wouldn't obviously, but.
Returnable bottles are now 10 cents each, so they can add up quick.
My point is, it's the whole year out,
Lots of
fundraising,
examples
but
anyway.
also.
Yes.
So it says 12 students here. Who picks the 12 students?
they don't get picked. That's what they're anticipating that they will have for an interest. If they have more interest, the change would be they'd have to take another chaperone. This trainer's hoping that happens because it's third on the list. I won't lie about that part.
Let's go
But
21.
Yep. So, that is not a set number. They would take as many as they could with the number of chaperones they had if they had
All grade levels?
all
Ninth
grade
through
levels. Yes.
And my only concern was seeing that price, and I wanted to make sure that if there were students that we had that looked at that just didn't even say like, oh, I'm not even interested, because they know their current situation. So I'm sure that Kate's, really into.
They're all over it.
Yeah,
I mean,
okay.
I really mean that, like, they're talking it up in classes even before it was approved, knowing that if it didn't get approved, they just have to say, hey, maybe next time, and that would be fine. But they really wanted to go, they want to reinstate it. They have such fond memories from what they come in and tell me of the trips that they've taken in the past, with the learners, that they really thought that this was a good idea.
Knowing Mr. Mond, I figured I knew the answer to that, but I wanted to make sure I said it.
Yeah, walk around Durham Fair with a big barrel.
All right, any more discussion on this one? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstained, motion passes. B, approve the Cogachog Regional High School field trip request for Panama.
Motion.
Motion.
Second.
Where's the motion?
Right here, Rob.
Oh, I didn't hear Bob.
John, second.
Jamie, all right, discussion.
Second.
And John.
All right, so as you know from, the last year with Mr. Bajoris and his unified group, because we are a unified champion school, I have to have my notes. I hadn't even write it down for the time. Because we are a unified champion school, we were invited to the USA Games and the World Games. Those were the students you saw come and present last year who went to the World Games. At the World Games, Rob's group was asked to apply for the Unified Youth Exchange through Special Olympics. So that all being said, this trip is not being run by Special Olympics. It's being run by the U.S. Department of State's Sports Diplomacy Division. You know now why I had to meet with him today to write all this down. He gave me more details, but I don't need to go into them. And they've given us a grant of $95,000 for outbound and inbound travel with students from Panama. As of yesterday, they were still on Zoom meetings trying to nail down the exact dates because Panama was on summer vacation. And getting students in Panama to apply to be part of when we go there. So the exact place and the exact date. We know it's probably like on there, the tentative dates of May 15th to May 22nd. Rob gets to vet, you didn't know this until yesterday either, all the applicants from Panama, meaning that anyone that applies into Panama, he has to make sure that they have their passports to come here, their visas to come here. He gets to do all that. He was very excited yesterday when he found that out. And along with sending our 8 students there, the students also have to do a project that's included. And there was some confusion on whether or not they could do the project here, because we want them to come during the Durham Fair, the contingent from Panama to come during the Durham Fair, and that would be our community project along with other things that they could do. And there was some controversy about when the report was due. He got confirmation yesterday, yes, they can come during the Durham Fair, those can be the projects for our students. But he has to make sure that the Panama students also have a project for him to do when he's there, so So Rob is actively working on this with Jen Keen, and Samantha Winkler's in on the meetings because she's an excellent detail person and listener. But it is being run by US Department of State, so we know it's going to happen. We were chosen, the details not being there is very frustrating. But if we wait till next month and we have all the details, that only gives the kids not even a month probably to get ready to go. And that's collecting passports again, and we don't need visas to go there. Making sure their insurance, they are offered insurance, travel insurance while they're there, making sure everything's in place for us to go. So we wanted to bring it to you tonight, to get approval.
How does that selection go? Because I know it's 4 and 4, right?
It is 4 and 4, and there are age and criteria of typical versus unified students. There was a blanket ask, an email to students that were eligible. And then Rob backed up from there. I do think we have the students identified. They're not, packing their bags yet, but he's working on making sure they have everything. I think if we had 5 and 5, we probably would have taken 5 and 5, but we do have 4 typical and 4 special ed students that will travel right now with Rob Joris, Jen Keen, and a special ed teacher at this time is the 3rd one that would go with the 8 students.
One thought I have is just, and this is just once the kids know who are coming, make sure they understand that the Durham Fair is an agricultural fair. Right, because when you go, they're gonna have to take their shoes off, they're gonna have to, when they go back into Panama, they're gonna ask them, have you been on a farm while you were here? And because they're trying to stop all of that, invasive species and bacteria and how's disease and all that. So I'm just thinking that in my head, I'm like, make sure that someone has gone over, like, what are they gonna need to get back into Panama? Because they're gonna ask.
It's a good
Just
point.
thinking about that.
One of the questions I asked to your point, like, I do think we have a.
See a farm.
Well, but there's cow poop at the Durham Fair.
I feel like we have the State Department on our side, because
Yeah,
I
right.
also asked the question, they don't want anyone traveling now if your passport's going to expire within 6 months. So I made that comment to Rob and just said, make sure that whoever, he said, oh no, the State Department told us we were 3 months. So they, I guess, can do whatever they want, which makes sense because of the US State Department. But because I think he was concerned about that with the passports. So that's a good point, that we just need to let them know so that when these, however many kids are coming here, go back, that this might be the case, but.
It's gonna be interesting to have 4 special ed kids that have passports.
We're working on it.
I
It's
mean,
hard to get a passport without a state ID. So
Yeah.
a couple of them don't have their IDs because they
Yeah.
don't drive. Ben Shouty's also going. I didn't mention that as a translator. I didn't mention that part, because none of the rest of them speak Spanish. But yeah, 2 of them have them and 2 of them don't. So we're working on that as well. Hopeful that right now the holdup with that is the Connecticut state ID.
Yeah,
The US State Department said, once you get the Connecticut state ID, you can have the passport in 3 days.
Another recommendation I would have is if at least one of the adults is, has all of the CPR and all that. In general, the beaches aren't gonna have lifeguards. Like, it's gonna be the responsibility of the adults with the kids.
Okay. I'm sure Rob does, being a health teacher, but that's easy enough to get before we go. We've got Craig as the trainer of trainers, and he would train anyone who
Nice.
needed to.
Perfection.
can we get the Hartford Current engaged in this at some time?
Sure, before we go. Well,
Well, or
Yes.
right as we go?
as we go.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a big.
It's a
this
big
is
deal.
a Big deal
Sure.
to have one little school doing a worldwide activity, and the town Times is not gonna cover it successfully.
Or at all.
Yeah.
I still think we should send
Certainly
them
don't do it
anyway.
for sports, right?
No, we got
Town
some
Times.
good Cheshire and even some,
Yeah. so
perhaps the town
it-
times.
100%, and I won't put that on Rob, I will put that on, Katie or I, or whoever we, and our secretaries, because I think you're right, he doesn't have time right now, but I think that's really important to get. Channel 8, I do have a connection there and some other things that maybe we can.
61 does their whole good things in schools segment, they come out, they work with the kids.
Yeah, I
also.
mean, they'd all wanna cover it,
It's a good
Yeah.
point.
Absolutely.
especially when the kids come here too.
Yeah.
Agree. All right, no more discussion, well, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes. Fantastic, okay, I think you're off the hook.
I need the diploma signatures, did you guys sign that?
I have it, yeah, hold on a second.
Sorry.
I'll
I'll
start
say, do
though.
call it, we're fine, just
Start.
go ahead, keep
Committee,
going.
no, it's right, I multitask.
Keep going, you're good.
Committee reports, policy and building as much as we want to try to keep these to short as possible, because we are occurring at 8:30 right now. So, Bob?
Policy committee met, we asked on the admission to public schools before age 5, we asked that some adjustments be made and be brought back to the next policy committee. So administration is doing the changes that we talked about. The nepotism policy, we said that we ought to have some kind of exemption for board members or other faculty that have student teaching or substitute teaching on not on a permanent substitute basis, but as needed basis. And administration's working on that amendment. And finally, on their review of fundraising, I think the bottom line we came down to is that we're going to keep it as it is, but make sure that permission forms are very readily available and include those where they're unfair and make sure they're out early and simple. And so that they could even be a yearly activity to give them permission to students to participate in fundraising activity by your student. You can make it easier by your permission slip rather than just by individuals. So you could do something like that. Administration's working on that as well. And we moved the 9,000 series to next week. That was it.
Building, you're back up. You make John do it.
I don't think he was there, was he? Okay, the last building committee, weren't you in negotiations?
Yes. I'm sorry, I'm doing something so that I can follow that.
Let me do it.
Sure. Yeah, no, go ahead.
Okay, Pig Lane two is all done, all the bills have been paid. Pig Lane 3, which is who the drainage work along and work with the town on sidewalks. I think Jacobson has given us a plan for the drainage along Picket Lane where it floods on the corner. Eric put up a barrier for the chicken farm to stop driving across the road. Probably need something a little more permanent.
Yeah, he keeps taking that down and going. He keeps taking that down.
Yeah. We could put some
Barbed wire.
or
Landmines.
or just a tire breaker. The field house, there's a meeting today, apparently. There's supposed to be a meeting today on the preliminary design for the bathrooms. I don't know if it happened. They didn't talk about it tonight. But there's supposed to be a design for the electrical installation and bathrooms. And we should have a preliminary layout for those things. I thought they were talking about having it done for March 13th.
And I think Eric had some communication with them today,
Yeah.
so I think it probably was.
Yeah, it probably is. So we should be able to, once we get the 430 from Kim, just get it from the state, get it?
The bid waiver
The
That's the money,
grant.
the
No,
430,000.
for for the lights, not yet,
Yeah.
the reimbursable.
Oh, so
We have to do
go
the
ahead.
work and pay for it, yeah.
So we can start then, right? What,
We cannot start until they, first of all, let us know if we have the bid waiver for the lights.
yeah,
And second of all, we've got to get the three quotes for the bathroom.
Right.
We have to submit an RFP, so we've got a little bit of work before we can start stuff.
Eric and how we know that.
Correct.
The fire pump, it keeps going on, but it looks like we need one more flow test and that'll be done by Connecticut Water and we will save a significant amount of money that's in our bond fund. So it'll be, have to get moved somewhere else. Or eliminated. The turf is gonna start on June 17th. The replacement, it will take 4 to 6 weeks. We won't be able to, nobody will be able to use the track or turf during that time period. So the track will have to be closed to the events. Hopefully it'll be, by the time they start practice in August, it should be done. But if not, they'll have to practice on the grass.
Did we communicate that to both Durham and Middlefield on the past events that are using the track, or even residents because they're walking the track? in the
We have
summer?
not yet. We do plan to.
Okay.
Might be a little early still.
You might have
Yeah.
to get a different access to the basketball courts. Cause it goes through the track to get to them, right?
No. No,
That you have to go
they
through
can go
that.
through there, but it doesn't take them onto the track.
Yeah.
They go, it.
Oh, yeah,
the
yeah. the
zigzag
fence
thing
is
goes
there,
in.
so they
Yeah,
can put
yeah,
the
Yeah,
fence,
but
right.
there's enough to get there.
We could talk about it at our next building committee.
Yeah,
meeting, too.
and the rest we talked about, the building and the tennis courts, we've got new, screens going up and that was bench warmers provided the money for them and
We put them up
They-
today. It's
yeah,
almost
they're up.
completely done. They look fantastic.
They look great. They're up there.
Translucent with the blue devil in the background. It looks even better than the mock-up did, so.
oh, good. And they also agreed to put the Blue Devil in the middle of the football field. And that was it.
Okay. All right, this is Student Achievement Committee. Jamie?
Nope. EL programs, what else?
I know. Okay, I want you to know that the building committee was a 1 hour meeting, if it even goes that long, and student achievements at least 2
So
hours.
give you some grace on the stapled document I see in front of you.
So 2 hours, yes, okay. So yes, the first discussion was an EL update and middle school discussion. We had a very lengthy discussion about the EL program, and Mrs. Mariana came and did a presentation for us with some more details. I'm going to give you a little background, a little bit of a explanation of what KIDM is. It's the online platform that's used in grades K-5 for the program, available for both teachers and students. It has a lot of resources. It's continually updated. It provides updated resources without which the district would have to purchase teacher editions yearly. It also contains student activities and differentiation opportunities. Teachers can provide immediate feedback within the platform and with learners working in real time. Students can listen to lessons and submit their work through the platform. I think it's pretty interesting. Teachers can monitor while the students are actually working. Unit assessments are also embedded in the lessons. There's been a high usage of the program. 75 teachers have accessed the content. 61 teachers were accessing presentations and slide decks, and 249 students have been active on the platform. And the reason I mention that is because there's questions not only about student assessment and programs, but the cost for KIDM. For each elementary school, it's a little over $5,000, and for sixth grade only, it's a little over $3,000. I believe that's in our budget this year. Yep. Data and overall trends for benchmark assessments will be presented at the next Achievement Committee meeting. We had a lengthy discussion that followed about the KIDM program and how assessment is measured. Skills are introduced based on the science of reading. Some student achievement observations so far are kindergarten growth in letter, name, and sounds has been significant. There have been a lot of gains in phonological awareness. Grade 1 students are moving from partial alphabetic, which probably means beginning and ending sounds, and to full alphabetic spelling and have grown in decoding skills. Reading fluency is also being worked on. Second grade is working on vowel teams and compound words, increasing fluency and comprehension. Some components of the second grade skills block are being used for the third graders who need them, and a phonics program in Kidham is being looked at for additional support. Assessment data will look different than in the past. The district is still using DIBELS for benchmark assessments. The Achievement Committee needs to see data that shows that every student is making adequate yearly growth. There was also a lengthy discussion about the content of the 5th and 6th grade modules. The second topic was evaluation update. The full PDEC committee met on 2/27 to review the draft process, timeline, and forms developed by the subcommittee. Multiple follow-up meetings are scheduled with the subcommittee and the PDEC committee for additional input on any revisions. The goal is to bring everything to the Student Achievement Committee meeting in May, obtain approval, and then to send information out to the staff. Next year, the committee will continue to receive feedback and make any necessary modifications. Number 3, work competencies update. Work is being done on building math, ELA, and overarching competencies. The next step is to develop implementation plans. K-8 math and ELA competencies have been brought to the instructional coaches, interventionists, and team leaders for review. The next step is to bring these competencies to the teachers. Grades 9 through 12 competencies are being worked on. The goal is to bring these competencies to PLC meetings at least once a month and to discuss what this looks like in the classroom and get feedback. Examples from other districts are also being looked at. Competencies are rooted in the state standards and Common Core standards, and the draft of these competencies will be brought to the full board. The last piece was the high school pathways. We had an update. The draft Health and Human Services pathway was shared with the committee. This pathway was chosen first because there are existing classes and staff at the high school. There's 3 concentrations in the Health and Human Services pathway: Health Services, Human Services, Government Law, and Public Administration. This pathway will be shared with students and parents at the end of the year. The students will have flexibility to change classes, and some will also be available to upperclassmen. The business pathway has 3 concentrations: marketing, business administration, and finance. This should be complete by the end of the school year. 7 classes will be articulated next year, and staff will work with 7 different professors from the University of Bridgeport to offer these 3 credit classes, which are Accounting 1, Physics, Macroeconomics, Intro to Psychology, Criminal Justice, Chemistry, and Exercise Science. These classes will be also available to all levels of students. Also discussed was availability for student financial assistance, staffing requirements, space for the exercise science classes. The business and engineering manufacturing pathways may need more staff. Counselors will guide students, especially freshmen, with their choices. Students take a career survey in the middle school and high school. The UConn credit classes are not being dropped. Incoming freshmen were instructed to choose 6 primary electives and 9 secondary electives. And it was suggested that information about these pathways be shared with the community along with parents and students. Did I mess up anything?
No, I feel like it was that student achievement. Yeah, so did you want to touch base on ELA?
Yeah, we just wanted to make sure, we've been talking about this since December, that it is our plan, unless there's objection, to move forward with the EL program, move it into the 6th grade, not the whole middle school, but into the 6th grade next year. And we've had a lot of discussions at Student Achievement about that. We feel good about it. Stephanie can answer any questions here for those that weren't at Student Achievement and not part of that. But it's it's a recommendation, not just of the district, but of Cheryl, the principal, at Strong and her team. There's a fundamental flaw, they believe, with the current curriculum that they're using. And it also makes sense to us that since we've adopted this program K-5 to allow the kids from Memorial to move up, and the plan would be to then scale it up 1 year at a time through the middle school to terminate at 8th grade. And again, we've had a lot of conversation around this, so we can talk more, but I don't want to make Stephanie talk unless you guys have questions that haven't been answered at this point. And the budget, we've already addressed that piece of it as well.
I think when it comes down to, by Katie, again, when it comes down to, Lucy and I met with Stephanie and Doug, and we had, really, in-depth conversation, just in general on the modules for 6th grade. And I think what we came to a consensus on, at least for ourselves and for student achievement, is that we really felt that the program seems to be working really well, for considering the rollout. There's been, some criticism on the state lines with talking about the 7 programs and whether you pilot something and whether you just jump into it. We did do a lot of jumping into things, and we're hoping to see growth there. And when it comes to the 5th grade modules, it's some of the modules, and we all talked about before, but I'm talking too long about stuff here now, was that social studies was incorporated into that ELA module. And they've yet to really get to the social studies portion of the year. And they're gonna work on doing projects within the science program and within the science classes, teaching a social studies unit every 2 units. We do a social studies unit. Is that the understanding, Stephanie?
Yes.
Yeah, and so they're gonna get that incorporation for the rest of the year. And I think our concern is just that so much had happened with the 5th grade with that content and with whether we were teaching social studies or we weren't. And I want the board to get to a point where we're saying, we're good, like, we're okay, we're moving past where we were with that. And I think there is some concern among, members that we're not there yet on the content or the modules for grade 6. I think we're really good on the program for next year and making sure that these students have what they need for next year. So my recommendation was we're okay with moving it up to 6, but we'd still like to have discussions to make sure that the content that we're incorporating with the EL is following our current rubric or curriculum. And I think that is something we can all probably come to an agreement. And again, it's not really vote, it's budget neutral. And we do really need to trust and have trust reciprocated and make sure we continue talking about it. I think there's a lot of commitment from Doug and Stephanie to make sure that we're still talking and making sure that we're not in a point next year where we're sitting here and saying, we don't know what they're learning. We want to know what they're learning, and it's not, it's not a policing, it's not anything that's just, we really want to know. And I think we have a lot of understanding on that level.
No, we do, and I appreciate that. And again, this has been mentioned as student achievement, but I think those of you that have been part of that, maybe haven't been, the EL program is going to require us to change the 6th grade master schedule to put more time for English language arts, which I happen to think is a good idea anyway, given what we want to commit to that kind of fundamental content area. And so that lines up nicely with the expectations of the EL program. The other piece is we have teachers and our literacy coach over there that, again, they knew we were talking about this tonight. They've already kind of started getting trained up for next fall because they're excited about doing it. We just didn't want them to keep training on it if it's something that they weren't actually going to implement. So
I think the benefit too, and looking at, not talking about like moves and changes, for next year, but one of the 5th grade teachers will be moving up to Strong.
Correct.
My understanding.
That's correct.
So she's got this year under her belt. She can help that grade. So I want to make sure we're just not here next year. We're talking about the same thing. And want to make sure, I'd love to know what the schedule is going to look like for 6th. I want to know it's going to be successful, because I think there were some bumps in the road with it this year. And, I want to make sure, I think we all want to make sure that doesn't happen next year. So between the schedule and the content, if we could just get together or keep talking, even if it's student achievement or if we're talking, outside, as long as we can get there, I think we'll be all right. Anyone else have any concerns on it? I'm all right with that. we'll keep that, maybe not student achievement after, but following student achievement, you should have some
Probably.
answers to what it would look like.
Yeah, the strong schedule, I think, is more solidified at this point than the Memorial one. But that's also because Memorial shifting from 3-4-5 to 4-5, and we don't want to just make a independent shift into 5 that doesn't also consider what's going to happen in 4. And I think I said this is student achievement, and Noel was there too. Our overall goal is to make 4th and 5th, now that they're together under one roof, more than just a single teacher teaches every subject model, but less than kids change classes for every subject model. And I think a lot of what could be in between there, but we've also talked to Cheryl about the 6th grade, and to the extent that those schedules can mimic each other, we think that would help also the transition from 5th grade to 6th grade. It can't be perfectly aligned because the related arts staffing is just very different than the way we do middle school. And so they're working on that. And yes, we'd be happy to brief on that.
And I think maybe even at the end of the year, if we can, if you do know certain schedules and you're not working them out towards the end of the year, if we could have a briefing, maybe our last meeting of the year, to say, this is what the schedules are going to look like next year. This is what we anticipate. I think it'll help coming into the beginning of the year with parents asking.
Well, I think it's kind of interesting you say that too, going back to an earlier report. Now that we've told them where they're going to be and how they can move, many of the staff are now saying, okay, what's the schedule going to look like, and what's this going to be? And so that's kind of next on the list for Memorial specifically. There are no plans, as I understand it, for Lyman or Brewster to do anything but the single teacher model. That could change at some point, but for next year, there's no plans to do that. So it's really Memorial and grade 6 that would have the information to share with you all.
Okay, all right. I'll be really quick because I'm losing my voice again. I swear, guys, that's been 3 weeks, but maybe by week 4, I'll have my voice. Board communications, professional development, just in general, today was Cave Day on the Hill, so a bunch of us had gone up and testified at the state level today. Interestingly, I didn't realize he'd be there, but one of our juniors at Coggins-Chog, Liam Fitzpatrick, is interning with one of the senators. And so I took a clip of it. I'm going to send it to Deb. I didn't get to talk to her about it. But the senator actually, at the beginning of the education committee meeting today, he's one of the ranking members, actually brought up the fact that Liam is the youngest intern they have up there, that he's incredibly talented, and that they're really thankful to have him there. So it was really great to see. And, they panned over and they were able to have him, wave and say hi. And it was great to see, just knowing in that room, I think there was over 100 different testimonies on just the bills today. Monday, there was also, I think, 120 with more coming in. So you had that many people lined up, and have a junior be able to be okay being in a room like that. Apparently he's done a lot of networking and public speaking, and it was great to see. Besides that, I don't really have anything else. Anyone else have anything? We did receive a good amount of emails and feedback on the math department, and two of them came today. I'll respond to them today so you guys can see those. We'll take those into account for a budget session on the 20th. Any other communications or fun things out there?
Well, the play is next week, the 23rd. I know you can get tickets now online, and I know those who haven't gone to Mr. Coggins-Chog, it's a very funny night. It's my old Preston's.
He's
doing
performing.
anything, huh?
He's performing.
He's performing.
Yeah.
He's
so
participating, yeah.
He's performing.
We did just have,
It is.
for those that were able to be there for the capstone projects, it was one of the most, I always say it's the most rewarding, but it was amazing, to have them get up there. And I had 4 amazing kids that were able to truly, even if they had picked a project and to see that they were able to pivot if it wasn't going to work out, or if they weren't going to get the internships that they needed. one had looked at, more a biology route. She couldn't get the internship she wanted, so she ended up going to a hobby and finding out that this hobby is probably something that's socially and emotionally is going to help her get through college and work through some clubs. And it was great to see, because not only were we looking at careers, but they were saying, I don't want to do this, and to be able to have that insight now, as opposed to when they're sophomores and changing majors. And we've got one that was able to be in the OR with an anesthesiologist for a good amount of time up at Children's Hospital. And it was amazing to see the passion and the excitement for the future. I know a few of you that would be, I didn't get to see everyone, but I saw you on the documents.
It'd be nice to see more than 4.
I know, I wanted to see them all after I saw the
Yeah,
4.
yeah, it's hard to sit there and do 4 and then say, what are these other guys
I
doing?
know,
It'd be
I
nice
know.
to see it.
And I think some are being chosen in order to present to the junior class, I think.
Yes.
So it might be an
That
opportunity
was
to.
the little box for exemplars.
Yep,
I
yep.
think those that we rated exemplars will be the models then for the upcoming class. Yeah,
That would be
exactly.
great whenever that happens. I'd love to be able to go to that.
And having participated last year, I noticed this year that the projects were more focused than they were
Well,
last
they had
year.
longer time period and they do it.
Yeah, last year was their first year, so it was a little
Much
bit,
more
but this
focused.
year they
Refine
had,
the process.
they had a better understanding of what the process was.
And I think when it comes to what's going on at CAVE and a lot of the legislation that's coming out of the education committee, there's some stuff that does, really pertain to us. And there's a lot of stuff that doesn't pertain to us. So I'm gonna try to tease that out to the board. And the doctor has spoken. She would like to adjourn. So I'll make sure I get that to you guys, just so you know what's going on. And I'll forward the testimony from today and the videos. So with that, I think we got public comment. Sorry, Linda.
It's fine.
I know we don't have any public comment in person. If there's any public comment online, there is not. There's no public comment. Dr. Darcy, would you like to make?
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Thank you all.
I gotta be at work at 1 a.m. I gotta go.